Hey, thanks for joining us here today. Don't forget to share. It is such a snowy day. I came extra early. Thought I came extra early after having to drive here. It took me an extra 40 minutes to get here anyways, so my extra early paid off. Mat-Su Borough about ready to start the meeting. Lots of juicy stuff. If you haven't seen the 907 video posted earlier today, please check it out. It'll catch you up on what's going on here tonight. For having such bad road conditions, I am amazed at how many people have shown up here tonight. Of course, this is about our Second Amendment rights. I don't know very many people that won't risk life and limb to protect that freedom we have. No matter how minute it may be, of a change in ordinances that they have here. I still have yet to ever answer the simple couple of questions. Has any building ever been damaged by this ordinance that they want to pass? Has any safety violations? Has anybody been harmed, hurt, shot, killed? This ordinance is supposed to be for our safety and our protection, but they can't answer the simplest questions of why it has to be there in the first place. Please don't forget to share. This is about ready to begin. Another fun-filled meeting at the Mat-Su Borough. Don't hesitate, throw your questions up. Nice to see more people joining in here. Don't forget to share. In fact, let me type a message here real quick, get things going for the day. I will have to go radio silently here real shortly. It's about ready to begin. course, you have to chuckle.
Hello, everybody. If you go ahead and take a seat, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. This is a regular meeting for Tuesday, February 18th. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
I will. Tim Hale.
Here.
Stephanie Nowers. Here. I'm expecting George McKee, Ted Leonard.
Here.
Dan Mayfield.
Here.
Jesse Sumner.
Here.
Tam Bovee. Here. You do have a one.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to approval of the agenda. And I want to ask the Assembly, is there any objection to moving audience participation, Resolution 20-18 and referral ordinance 20-25 prior to public hearings? The intent of that is to make sure that the audience that's here tonight is heard first, and we can have the Assembly discuss both the resolution and the ordinance shortly thereafter. Is there any discussion or objection? Member Hale.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would support that with the suggestion that we take up the referral before we take up the resolution, and if you'd like, I can speak to why. Yeah, it seems a little premature to consider 2018 until we know whether we're going to decide to send the 2025 off to the planning commission for the public hearing. If this body decides that the public process has been met at this point and that there's no need to send the 2025 off to the planning commission for public hearing, then I'd be more than happy to support 2018. But if we do decide to send it to the planning commission, I think that it would be detrimental to basically tie staff's hands if the planning commission is going to do it.
Okay, thank you, Member Sumner.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. You're not going to eliminate comment, the opportunity for comment on the resolutions, are you?
No, sir. The intent of the motion is to allow the good folks who have showed up this evening to give testimony early, move them up on the agenda, and move both the ordinance and the resolution up on the agenda.
I have no objection.
If I could very quickly, Deputy Mayor Mayfield asked for those items to be moved up. I do believe Assemblymember Hale requested that the referral ordinance come first to the resolution, so that would be the first thing we would need to decide.
So is there any objection to taking up ordinance 2025 before referral, before the resolution 2018? Hearing and seeing none. I'm sorry. Senator Sumner.
I do seem to have received a lot more public comment on 2018, which is something to be considered. I'm not sure that it particularly matters the order that we take it up in, but the bulk of the public comments seem to be on 20-18, so we may want to take that one up first.
By moving audience participation up, we can allow everybody to speak, whether they're in favor of 2018 or 2025. So is there any objection to Assemblymember Hale's motion? So hearing and seeing none, that's the way we'll proceed this evening. Are there any changes to the agenda other than that? Assemblymember Bobby.
I'd like to pull resolution 20-017 from the consent agenda.
You want to pull that? I'm sorry.
It's currently on the consent agenda, right? So we're going to speak to it separately. I'd like to pull that, please.
Okay, any objection? Hearing none, 2017 is pulled. Any other changes? Okay, hearing and seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Be taken up with that one item pulled. So, Director Barkley, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to minutes of the preceding meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes being presented? Hearing and seeing none, they are approved. That brings us to agency reports. Is Mayor Wasilla here? Yeah. What's that? Oh, there's an AML report? Oh, okay, yeah, apparently, Mayor Cottle is at AML. And how about the City of Palmer? City of Houston? I didn't think so, but you know, gotta ask. Do we have anybody from the school district here who'd like to provide a report? How about a report from the state of Alaska? Okay, we are moving right along. Is there a joint assembly school board committee update? None there either. Are there any public relations reports? We are moving on. Mr. Hayes, do you have a report? Do you want to keep it going here?
Just one, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The Assembly passed an ordinance on apprentice program, and with that it stipulated that we needed to come back with a plan and some procedures on how we were going to implement that apprentice program. And Russ Kraft, the manager for purchasing, is going to give us a quick briefing on that.
Welcome, Mr. Kraft.
Deputy Mayor, Assembly members, as Deputy Manager Hayes stated, back in October, on October 3rd, Ordinance 19103 was passed. And at that time, I know that at least two of the Assembly members requested that after development of the plan and procedures that we bring it back so that the Assembly could have an opportunity to see how we are going to implement that ordinance. There should be a copy of this document that was placed in the manager's report file and provided to everybody. Just to give you just a brief overview of how this came to be and an overview of how the program will work. We'll touch on a couple of items here. This plan is actually the third or fourth revision that we settled on as we were going through this. We looked at a lot of different plans that are already in place. Unfortunately, a lot of those plans were out of state, and the rules down in Washington are a little bit different than the rules up here in terms of labor availability within basically the two groups that make up the apprentice programs, the union and the non-union, the open and the closed shops. So right after the ordinance was passed, we got quite a bit of feedback from various contractors concerned about what was going to happen if they didn't have access to certain apprenticeship programs. Were they going to be penalized because they did not have access? So to try to find a solution, I reached out to ASD, to Anchorage School District, because they recently passed a similar rule. Theirs is a bit higher bar to achieve than ours. Theirs is 15% over every project over 100,000 and applies to individual trades within that project. They're waiting to see how it plays out. They have 2 projects out on the street right now that they're working through. So we're going to keep a close eye on that as we move forward with ours. So the plan or the ordinance that was passed here was 10% based on the overall project for anything over $1 million. That's probably achievable. From what I'm seeing, I don't think that there's going to be an issue, provided we allow for some give and take within that. So the ordinance specified that there had to be a waiver, or that there had to be a process for issuing a waiver, and during the debate, that the person issuing that waiver and making that decision was changed and was placed onto the purchasing officer position. So it's ours, and we'll make it work. And there's definitely no problem with that. So to give you an idea of how we went about doing this, we can get a list from the U.S. Department of Labor of all of the Alaska approved apprenticeship programs. The latest one that I saw was about 5 pages long, probably 20 to 25 different programs on each one. So there's well over 100 separate approved programs. And those you might have 20 of them that are electrical, but you have different operators, different organizations that are participating in those plans. So there are a lot out there, but again, they're for the most part separated into these 2 separate groups for the open and the closed shops. Each of them has rules in terms of drawing from their labor pools, and we developed a plan that wouldn't force any contractor to change their business model in terms of if they're union, we didn't want to put that in jeopardy by drawing from non-union labor. If they're a non-union company, we didn't want to force them to have to sign on to the union to draw apprentices out of those programs. There are, like I said, both unions, both apprenticeship programs available. So we started out with 10%, which was what 308-450 mandates. We require that the contractors submit with their bid a certification and affidavit stating they understand 308-450 is in effect on this project, and it is incumbent upon them to reach that 10% goal. As soon as we make a determination who that contractor is going to be by vetting through the bid process, we then ask them to give us a summary of all of the work that's going to occur with the estimated hours within each trade. And then they can go through and they can identify which of those trades just do not have an apprenticeship program available in the state. And we can pull some of that out. So I think in the plan it talks about, we'll use real round and easy numbers here. If 10% of the work for a particular project is allocated to a trade that does not have an apprenticeship program available to a contractor, we would then take that in half, go 5%, and remove 5% from the requirement. So instead of hitting a 10% goal, they would only be required to hit 9.5%. This would cover only trades that there just is not a program available. If there is a program available across the rest of the trades, the contractor would then need to reach out to those trades to work to get to that 10% goal. The question then comes up, what if there's just no labor available? So I think I touched on this when you passed the ordinance, that the easiest way is probably to follow the same procedure we use for our federal minority and woman-owned business programs, where it's the contractor is responsible for providing proof that they have gone out and sought the labor. They have notified all of the available apprenticeship programs requesting labor, and they would get feedback stating we don't have anybody, or we only have a limited amount, here's what we can support for the project. Under the maybe it's referred to as good faith efforts. So through this program, a contractor will either have to prove that they have attained the 10% goal or the adjusted if there's just no programs available, or they have gotten as much as they can and that shortage is covered by good faith efforts, effectively saying, we reached out, we tried to get apprentices in, but there just is no labor available to cover that shortage. Once that information comes in, we're asking for a true-up every 30 and 60 days throughout the contract. This won't impact a lot of contracts. You see it, we don't do a lot of projects over $1 million. But every 30 days with certified payroll, the contractor will submit a report of all of the labor, all of the hours showing the apprentice utilization compared to standard labor. Every 60 days, if they're going to claim good faith effort and they're not going to hit that, they need to recertify, they need to reach back out to those programs to show that they have tried to get it and that there is no labor available at that point. You get to the end of the contract, final invoice comes in, we get a final report of all of the labor components throughout that entire contract. We can see where they hit on that 10% level. If they're short, but they have good faith effort to prove that they tried to meet the goal, but it just was not available because of the labor shortage, they would have effectively met the requirement. If they don't meet the requirement, if they don't hit the goal, and they cannot show that they made a good faith effort to hit the goal, that information is going to be reported. Whether they meet it or not, it will be reported to the assembly in IM format as required by code. And this is the one tricky area that we played with is what is the penalty for not reaching it. Anchorage School District has a monetary penalty. It's very small, but the problem when we put penalties in that are monetary, we pay for them because contractors, if they know they're not going to hit, can potentially build that into their numbers. So what we've looked at here, and this is something that could progress as this goes along, is a contractor that fails to meet it, it's going to be reported, they will be placed on notice, and it could have a future impact on their responsibility determination. Would failing to meet it on one contract disqualify a bidder? I would have a hard time justifying that. But 2 contracts, 3 contracts, if there's a pattern of a contractor just not moving forward and placing the effort in to reach that goal, that's not the contractor that we want working for us if we're applying for 450 to the contract itself.
Very good. Any questions from the assembly? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Sprockles, do you have a report?
I have no report, but I do have an executive session at the end of the meeting, so we'll be talking about it.
Thanks, sir. Madam Clerk, do you have a report?
The meeting schedule is in your red folders. I will be out of the office February 29th through March 10th. So Brenda and Kelly will be with you at your next 2 meetings, and that's it.
Thank you. There are no citizen and other correspondence being presented. Madam Clerk, please read the items in the brief.
IM 20-023, reporting of conclusion of contract for bid number 18108B to South Central Construction Incorporated for Central Landfill Cell 4 construction project. IM 2030, informing the Assembly of grant agreements with Talkeetna, Trapper Creek, and Willow Elementary Schools to provide funds to assist their respective community enrichment programs. IM 2031, informing the Assembly of a personal intermittent use permit, for temporary land use of borough-owned land by Retriever Club of Alaska. IM 2032, informing the Assembly of 2 memorandums of agreement and temporary construction permits with the Alaska State Department of Transportation for Bearview Loop Pathway and Safety Improvement Projects. 20-33, informing the Assembly of a permit for temporary land use of borough-owned land by the Alaska Railroad Corporation. IM 2034, informing the Assembly of a commercial land use permit for temporary use of borough-owned land for Alaska Nature Guides to offer guided hikes in Tahkeetna Lakes Park. IM 2035, informing the Assembly of a permit for a temporary land use of borough-owned land by the Mat-Su Ski Club. IM 2037, informing the Assembly of a commercial land use permit for temporary use of borough-owned land for Raven Wings LLC to maintain a floatplane dock in Christensen Lake Park. IM 2041, informing the Assembly of agreement documents for a community assistance program to be presented to the borough manager for signature.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any comments in regards to the item? Senator Hale.
Yeah, I just want to say that the new, with the manager including the agreements and the permanent obligations on these things now, since we asked him to, I think that's really informative. There are, there's a bunch of legalese in there, kind of boilerplate contract language, but there are scopes of work and budgets and little maps about where each project is, and I really think that that's very helpful, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, they are as they are presented. That brings us to special orders of the day, and there are no persons to be heard. So that will bring us to audience participation. So as we move into audience participation, I just want to say to the group that please let's be courteous this evening. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and if you can refrain from applause or boos, that will make people much more comfortable in their ability to present their side of the matter to the Assembly. So that would be greatly appreciated. And just have a audience sign-up sheet. As I say, you'll have 3 minutes. And if the second and third speaker could kind of come up to the front of the room, that may save a little bit of time. So I'll call Chris Tyree as the first speaker, followed by Scott Buttigieg and Sherry Musgrave. So if you could just come up and have a seat up here, that would we'll be able to transition from speaker to speaker. Thank you, Ms. Tyree. Go ahead.
I'm Chris Tyree, and I'd like to give you a little background first before I say why I'm here. I was born in Costa Rica. I lived in a little shack. As you walked in the first room, there was no refrigerator, no stove, no table, because we had no food. And as you went around the corner, there was a bed, a mattress, no sheets, no pillows, no blankets. I wore a dress that was sewn here and here, no underwear, no socks, no shoes. So this leads me up to having come to America. I was a street urchin, and as a street urchin, you have the fullest sense and wonderfulness of freedoms, rights, and liberties. And coming to America was the greatest thing on earth for me. And for you guys to go against the Constitution of the United States really bothers me, because what you're leading up to is gun control. And some of you are wolf in sheep's clothing because you're trying to bring socialism and communism to our country. And that's how people are going to have to live under socialism and communism. Some people will have to probably live in boxes. Is that the way you want to treat your citizens in the United States? I don't think so if any of you have a heart. So please stop and think. What you are doing is leading to gun control, what Hitler did, and look what happened in the Second World War. So please think about these words and think about, do you want your family under a house like that and living like that? And if you guys don't realize, the shadow government behind you that is trying to talk some of you into doing this stuff, once they have what they want, they're not going to need you guys. They're not going to need Congress, and they're not going to need our representatives. They're going to be useless after that. So that's another thing you need to think about when you do all of this stuff. And I appreciate being able to talk. Thank you.
Again, we need to maintain decorum. And I understand that many of you are here on on some very serious issues and things that you take close to heart. But it is very important that we provide a comfortable environment for everyone to give public testimony. So I'd appreciate it if you could refrain from clapping or any other expression of agreement or disagreement, please. Mr. Vikish? Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Scott Vukic, and I'm the owner of Pioneer Tactical, a firearms training school located in the Mat-Su Valley. My wife and I live in the valley, as well as our 5 children and 5 grandchildren and all of our extended family. So we have a vested interest in the valley. I'm a 20-year Alaska law enforcement officer with 7.5 of those years being spent as a police officer right here in the valley. I am intimately familiar with shooting and training in the valley. The proposed shooting range ordinance is a solution that no one wants to a problem that doesn't exist. The vast majority of people who have contacted each and every one of you do not want this law passed. Why are you ignoring them? In fact, this ordinance does nothing to make the valley safer. It will do just the opposite. By making the process to build a new range so extremely burdensome and restrictive, you almost guarantee that no ranges will be built. You will drive more people to shoot on their own property, which was the basis for the original complaint. Not that that's a bad thing. Since the original complaint had nothing to do with public shooting ranges, it raises many questions about what your motives are behind this ordinance. It is also very troubling that Assemblymember Mayfield seems to think that the burden of proof is on the people to show the ordinance violates the Second Amendment, or Article 1, Section 19 of the Alaska Constitution. On the contrary, it is your job to create laws that are constitutionally benign and have the public's best interest and support. Strangely enough, this shooting range ordinance has none of those things. So here's just one of the ways that this ordinance violates the Second Amendment. In Alaska Statute 26.05.010, the militia is defined. Section 1 states that an organized militia consists of Alaska National Guard, Alaska Defense Force, etc., etc. Section 2B, though, pertains to the unorganized militia, which applies to other eligible people over the age of 17 and not serving in the organized militia. In other words, we are the militia. We, the people, are the militia. Article 1, Section 19 of the Alaska Constitution, in other words, the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Both the Heller decision and the Alaska Constitution have already recognized that this is an individual right. So, what is a well-regulated militia? Well-regulated is defined. It means that one is orderly, practiced, and well-trained. Oh. Wasted my time here. Okay. Part of keeping and bearing arms also includes all facets of gun ownership, like possessing ammunition and accessories. It also covers the use of firearms, which includes training. If you make it nearly impossible for new ranges to be built or existing ranges to expand, you are directly infringing on our ability to obtain and give quality training, firearms training, to the people of Alaska, who are the militia. We, the people, not only have the right, we have a civic duty and responsibility to obtain and maintain ourselves as a trained militia force for the purposes of defending the state and the borough against tyranny, other aggressors, and for the purposes of self-defense. I have 2 seconds here. So I support Resolution 2018 and agree that the shooting range conditional use permit ordinance needs to be shredded, scrapped, never to return in any form. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly members. My name is Sherry Musgrave. I am the first sacrificial lamb this evening because I am in support of Ordinance 2025. And I want to make it clear, I'm pro-gun. I'm very thankful for the existing gun ranges that we have and the training that they provide. What I don't want is for somebody to be able to come and purchase property in an established neighborhood and open up a gun range with no safety measures in place or limited safety measures in place. All I'm asking for is that we ask people that are opening up new ranges to have berms, to have noise control, to have backdrops to protect their neighbors. That's basically all I'm asking for. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Musgrave. I'm sorry. David Senna, followed by Angela Hutchings and Kenneth Bowman.
speak to you both as a gun owner and as a homeowner and a voter. How I vote for you or against you depends on how you respect my rights. Thank you.
First off, I would like to say that I am a mom. I was a police dispatcher for sheriff, EMS, and fire. And my husband also was a police officer, sheriff deputy, coroner, resource officer, K-9 officer, and an international police officer. We both took an oath to uphold the Constitution. Doesn't mean we took an oath just for law enforcement, it meant forever. And we will uphold our Constitution. I want you to imagine for a moment, if you can just even imagine, when my husband went to work in Kosovo, imagine the people who couldn't fight back from a government. Now, y'all think it wouldn't be possible, right? But I want you to think really, really quick here. When in Kosovo, they went door to door, they told parents to pick one kid, and they killed the rest. They took all their guns before, but they took one kid and picked the rest. Can you imagine dead bodies floating down a river? Can you imagine seeing children in orphanages that have been beaten left and right? That's a tyrannical government. It can happen. Hitler, to this day, still has homeschooling banned because he knew with the children, you could teach them all. You teach them all the same, you can control them. He also, still to this day, when I lived in Germany, they'd come to your house and make sure you have every TV, and they might make sure you have every radio. In November of the night on 2005, I was living in Amman, Jordan, and I was having dinner. Just got done with dinner. It was about 8:45, and I hear a boom. Next thing I discovered that there was 3 hotels that were blown up. Have you ever seen hotels blown up? Have you guys even been out of your zip code? Well, when you come back to the United States, and I was so excited because the only question I've ever been asked in the Middle East, in Austria, in Jordan, in Germany, was what's it like to be free? What's it like to own a gun? What's it like to say whatever the heck you want to? What's it like just to tell somebody to kiss off if you want to? They don't know what that's like. Not even in Germany. People are afraid in Germany even to speak out because they don't want to be referred to as being Nazis. One man, Hitler, came in and he had an idea and he took it all. And the people followed him because they were scared. I once met a long time ago with a gentleman from Hitler Youth. He said the reason why history always repeats itself is because people forget. And he told me a lot of what happened when he was a kid. And it was horrific. But it was only one man who started it. I want you to think about that because, Mr. Mayfield, you're running for Senate this year, right? You're the one who said you're going to pull your name. We will make sure that you're out of office. And anybody else who pushes this, we're going to make sure you guys are all out of office. Just remember that, because I will remember all of your names. I moved from Palmer to Big Lake. Do you know why I did it? Because Big Lake, Palmer's just, you start getting more and more laws and no more four-wheelers, no more this, no more that. Then I moved to Big Lake. And you represent Big Lake, but yet you pulled yourself. And you hear all the time, people are always target practicing out there, and that's the reason I love Big Lake. But yet you rescinded your name from this crazy, crazy crap of any type of regulation, and I'm not for it.
Patty Bowman and John James.
Say it again, sir.
It was Kenneth Bowman, Patty Bowman, followed by John James.
Hello, my name's Ken Bowman. I support RS 20-118 and do not support 20-025. OR 20-025 is not needed in the Mat-Su Borough. It's a waste of time and energy and resources. And I know you guys have better things to spend your money on. One thing about OR 20-25 is it's way too restrictive. It's impossible, would be impossible to set up a new shooting range. We only have 2 outdoor shooting ranges, 1 indoor in the Mat-Su Borough, and it's the size of the state of West Virginia. It's ludicrous. I think we need to be encouraging more establishing shooting ranges. I live in District 1, Mr. Hale's district, and we have a shooting range off Mod. It's the best thing that ever happened to our community. For one thing, people utilize the range every time it's open. It's open 6 days a week. it gets utilized very heavily, and we could use more of them scattered throughout the valley. The only other one we have is clean up in Talkeetna, that's an outdoor range, and so people are gonna shoot, and if you don't provide them with a well-maintained, clean place to shoot, they're gonna shoot other places. And on Mott Extension, I cleaned that area up so much. I lived there for 20 years, and they cleaned that place up. There's not a lot of partying there anymore. There's not a lot of wildfires like there used to be back there because people are partying and leaving stuff. There's people back there, they've got a good, clean place to shoot, and it's well maintained. The reason to keep this the way it is so we can have more shooting ranges, not less. Thank you.
Patty Bowman?
My husband said everything that I was going to say, so I pass on to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And John James, please.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is John James. I'll keep this real short because we've had some excellent speakers that have spoken to most of this. I spent 25 years in the United States Army. I've been around the world a couple times. I've participated in toppling governments and establishing governments. Always involved firearms. I see this plainly as a Second Amendment issue. It's a Second Amendment issue because you are potentially limiting facilities where the unorganized militia can safely train. Point blank. Did I say point blank? That's where we receive an education on firearms and firearms training safely. Also, they view this as a private property issue. It's a private property issue for the people who own the land. I respectfully ask this proposal is not supported. And I'll yield the rest of my time. Thanks very much.
Followed by Jonathan Coral and Terry Mitchell.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly. This is not an issue of guns. This is an issue of noise. You have landowners that say they don't like gun use at a certain time of hour. You've got people complaining because of the noise from the guns. They don't say anything about the safety. If we don't have open ranges, nobody's going to practice. They will go someplace else. Fact. How many in this assembly shoot? How many mow their lawn at 10:30 at night? It's irritating that people have to go to work the next morning. 2 o'clock in the morning. Summertime has no night. So ladies and gentlemen, the proposal to have an organized gun range that has education, all the things that are in 25, we've only got one in the valley. And that's the Matanuska Valley Sportsman. NRA sponsored, and it's also a nonprofit. Who's going to pay for the other ranges? Mod Road was built out of state funds. It's a wonderful range. Every now and then you get a group up there to cuss and swear and do whatever, and the people that don't do that leave. But they're still shooting at the correct targets. They're not shooting at just anything on the range. Same thing on the one in Talkeetna. It's the only 1,000-yard range in the state, as far as I'm aware, other than military range. Why don't they build around the Army's base? Because of the noise. They've got tanks, they've got firearms going all times of night. But people are so far away, they don't hear it. They're not disturbed. So how many activities during the summertime and the wintertime are noise producing? You like fireworks at 3 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Eve? How about July 4th? They have a fire hazard, but nobody enforces that. Who's going to go around and enforce all the fireworks that are going on? This is the noise ordinance. I don't like people with barking dogs that don't control them. We used to have a kennel of 100 dogs, and we controlled them. This wasn't in Alaska. But same thing with lawnmowers and everything else that goes through, Harleys going through, or out in the yard. I weld, I grind on things. I start at 9 o'clock in the morning after people get up, and I stop at 9 o'clock at night, so the noise is not bothering anybody. How many times can you go in a campground after 10:30 and have your music blaring, or have a party around a fire? It's controlled by courtesy and silence times. So the gun ranges are profound. They meet a need. How can can we train our kids to shoot if we don't have a place to go to? We can't always afford to go to a range. Well, we can buy 22 shells and teach them the proper handgun use, or long rifle use, or muzzle loader, or anything else that makes noise. Thank you very much.
Followed by Kevin Mitchell with Pat Reed.
Good evening. The reason I'm here is you people are not the founding fathers of this country. It was formed 200 years ago by wise people that escaped tyranny, control, and everything else. Do your history, World War I, World War II. This country has its guns. Everyone knows there's one behind a blade of grass in the United States. The other countries have been taken over, roughshotted, they've caved in, they've let foreign people come in and take over countries like England, France, and the rest of them, Australia, New Zealand, all of them. This Alaska should not wind up like that. We just got through taking a drive across the United States. The infrastructure is in shambles. It's old, broken down, and the priorities are mixed up. I don't want to see Alaska get their priorities mixed up by wasting time with this ordinance, which is nothing but gun control. That's all it amounts to. And it should not be even on the agenda here. You should be concentrating on more important things to do. There's plenty of things to do in Alaska that will help Alaskans. No stealing permanent funds, and et cetera, et cetera. There's many. The infrastructure is in shambles here, and this is a young state. It should not be. You're going to lose your citizens, and this is not good for Alaska. You people should be able to see that the Mat-Su Valley is growing fast. I've been here in the state for 45 years. I've lived in the valley for 10 years, my wife and I, and we have seen the deterioration of missed priorities. Don't miss the priority with this measure that you're proposing. It's wrong, it's incorrect. I'm not going to stand for it, and I'm sure that everyone here, why they're here, they don't want to stand for it either.
So can you state your name for the record? I didn't want to interrupt you.
So you want to state my name?
Just state your name for the record.
Johnson is the first name, Quarles is the last name, Quarles.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
My name is Terry Mitchell. I came up here 11 years ago to get away from the lower 48 because I left California in 1981 because I could see the writing on the wall there. My youngest son is a police officer there. I pray every day for him because California is a rotten state. The people that run it don't care about the people. My whole family lives there, but I can see the writing on the wall. And I'm seeing the writing on the wall up here after 11 years that I've been up here. You people should be ashamed of yourself. This is the last frontier for the American people, and more people are coming up here every day to get away from the lower 48 because they're trying to keep guns away, tell us what to do. Every day it's something. Look at Virginia. Look what they're doing there. Look how many people showed up there to let them know that, no, you're not taking our guns. You're not taking our rights away. And I'm going to stand up, and I will stand up against all of you if you decide to do this, because this is wrong. We are working people. We worked hard all of our lives to get where we're at in life. And damn it, I am not going to let you people take everything away from us like they're doing in the lower 48. This is a beautiful state. It's a beautiful place to live. But people are leaving here every day, too. And what we're getting up here, you don't even want to go in Anchorage anymore. If you do, if you're a female, you better have your car's doors locked, because people, the minute you pull up at a light, these lowlifes that are coming up here are ripping women out of their cars, stealing things. I want a gun. raped years ago. I wish I'd had a gun in California. I couldn't carry one. If I would have, I wouldn't went to all the trauma and everything that I went through down there. And I don't want the women up here to do the same thing. I want gun control, and I'm sorry, I just want guns and things up here and not take our guns and things for us. I want to be able to go to a range and shoot. All of my grandchildren shoot because their father's a police officer and he teaches them. And all the children up here, they're good kids, a lot of them, but they're not going to be if you start hacking away everything that this state has. The kids are good kids, but they're not going to be anymore if you just keep taking and taking and taking away from us.
Moving on, we have Pat Reed, followed by Murph O'Brien, and then Lee Hendrickson, I believe.
I'm Pat Reed. I've been here about 50 years. I'm going to read it off, but I have a little trouble with speech always. Most here tonight don't know that competitive shooting was the #1 attended sport in this country at one time. The form of shooting, which was called shooting, was brought to this country by German immigrants. It pretty much ended with World War II. During its heyday, all the big cities had numerous shooting venues and teams that competed against each other. The important thing here is that shooters had a place to shoot, and a potential new shooter had a place to give it a try and get some help getting started. San Francisco had like 10 teams at one time, 10 shooting areas in the city. It has been stated that this new borough ordinance dealing with shooting ranges does not affect one's ability to step outside his door and shoot on his own property. I'd be willing to wager that most in attendance here tonight can't do that for one reason or another. Historically, it's been almost impossible to get a new shooting range started in the Mat-Su Borough. An example is the range that was all set to be constructed close to the Menard Center. That didn't happen due to ignorance of the facts mainly. Noise was handled by baffles and blows leaving by baffles and burns. Some said it wasn't safe to have a shooting range that close to so many young folks using the area. The truth is, your child going inside the Menard Center would be much more likely to be injured there doing a more socially accepted sport, such as hockey and so forth, than if you participated in a sport on the shooting range. Personally, I participated in the sweat sports as long as I could, and I dearly loved the game of basketball. But unfortunately, I outgrew basketball. I got way too old. Competitive shooting is a sport that I didn't get into early on, but it is one that I have done for about 40 years now, and can still be competitive, and I do enjoy it. What I'm trying to get at here is that shooting is a very safe sport that offers a lot of enjoyment, and whether one is a competitive or a recreational shooter, he still needs a place to practice, and that is where the shooting range comes in. This proposed new range ordinance would for all practical purposes pretty much end any future ranges. I think the borough should reject this ordinance. If things were done right, every community would have its own public range. Alaska shouldn't be one of the hardest places to get a new shooting range started, but it is. By rejecting this ordinance, you will at least appear to recognize the shooting sports as an important part of our heritage.
Good evening. My name is Murph O'Brien, and I'm a 40-year resident of the borough. And I'm just going to bring up a couple issues that should be considered. I certainly support Second Amendment rights. I have my own weapons. And some of my fondest memories are going to the shooting range in Santa Teresa Country Club, or State Park, I think it was. with my dad as a young man. I think that, this is actually a land use consideration that we're talking about. And there are compatible uses and non-compatible uses. There are places where shooting ranges can be and should be located, and there are places where they should not be. And I think that regulations at a modest level is a benefit. And I'm not just talking about shooting ranges, I'm talking about land use regulations in general. We need investment, and people who are looking to invest in the borough hesitate. They hesitate because they're not sure if their investments are going to be protected. They're not sure if they put in a several $1 million facility that there is not going to be an incompatible use located next door. And I think that the long and the short of it is that when I first moved out here, and I'm happy I can say this now because one time I held a meeting and I was told, well, you haven't lived here 40 years, so you had nothing to say about things. I can now say I've lived here over 40 years, and hopefully I can say a few things. And, when I first lived here in '76, there were less than 10,000 people. There's now, probably at the census, going to be close to 120,000 people who live out here. That density is, force or become, allow the borough to become a metropolitan planning organization in order to secure federal funds. That same density, allows us, or should allow, some level of regulation to protect our property rights, our property values. In some cases, a shooting range next to a residence impacts property values. So I don't know if this is the right ordinance. It could be, it may need tweaking. But I think the conversation needs to be had, and all sides need to come together and take a look at what makes sense. Because I will be very disappointed as I try to retire for the third or fourth time that my assets go down in value because an incompatible use gets located next to my property. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Lee Henriksen, followed by John Miller and Stephen Wright, I believe.
Hello, Lee Henriksen here. I just want to read the intent of the ordinance to remind people. It is the intent of this chapter to allow outdoor shooting facilities to operate within the borough while minimizing the likelihood that people, domestic animals, or properties will be jeopardized. I was out skiing on the Moose Range last week, parked at the end of Mount Road, and we went cross-country skiing, and there's a lot of gunshots out there. Found out there's an unofficial shooting range at the end of Mount Road that gets used a lot, and they're not always shooting where they should be, and there's a lot of trails around there. So I'm concerned about my safety when I go out on the trails with unregulated shooting ranges. I would love this ordinance to move through. I would love all you people who are concerned about the shooting range to participate in the process. So I get my safety and you get your ranges. Let's work together to solve this for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. John Miller?
Yes. Thank you, members of the Assembly, and thank you all people for coming out here tonight to speak. First of all, my name is John Miller, and I've lived out in the valley for over 40 years. I'm speaking on behalf of support of Jesse Sumner's proposal to overturn, to reverse the 2025 resolution. But first, my neighbor Jim Passink has asked me to speak on his behalf because he doesn't want to come up here and stand because he's doesn't know if he can stand for that long. So he asked me to speak for himself and his wife. Jim, could you raise your hand so they can see that you're a real person out there? And he wants to speak also in support of Jesse Sumner's proposal to reverse 2025. There's not a whole lot I could add to what the people out here have already said. I'm in full support of the people that spoke on behalf of reversing 2025. The one thing I would like to say, though, is we need protection out here. We don't need protection from criminals or invasions or whatever. We need protection from our own government. Our government we need someone to protect our life, our liberty, and our property. And that's why we have hired you folks. That is absolutely your main purpose, is to protect our life, our liberty, our property. Everything else is secondary to that. That's what our Declaration of Independence so clearly says. So I just want you to keep that in mind, because our liberties are being encumbered by so much control, so much government control in the form of regulations, everything. You need a license for this, you need a permit for that, can't do this, you can't do that, Most people govern themselves pretty good. But when you put controls on the people, it's only the honest people that are punished. Because the lawbreakers, they're not going to submit to the controls. We have lots of laws on the books, but the more laws we have, it seems like the more criminals we have. So I just want to encourage you to protect and not try to control us. We don't need to be controlled. Thank you very much.
Folks, I'm going to ask again. I want to make sure that I'm respectful to each and every one of you this evening. And I really wish that you would respect the decorum of this body by refraining from clapping, because it really does tend to
It's short support of
Free speech, freedom of speech.
absolutely.
I will not comply.
One of the things that I really appreciated about the demonstration that was held outside in regards to your cause is that the participants there were very polite and respectful, and
I was there.
I did wish that
I was there.
we could do that.
I am not in
So,
right now.
Stephen Shirley is the next speaker, followed by Esther Huddleston and Kim Norton, please.
I'm right here.
Gotcha.
Hey, my name's Steve Schuler, and Dan Mayfield, you're Big Lake, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, I live in Big Lake. I came here, and raise your hand if you're for the Second Amendment. I'm not even looking. Half the people raise their hand. Is that correct? More than half. So why are we even having this debate? Why are we even having this? I talked to a friend of mine today, and he said, your beliefs do not begin where my rights end. So what that means is, I have a right to do the Second Amendment, and your beliefs, whatever it is, have no bearing on that. Anybody else agree with that? And you're about to say we can't clap. I understand that too. Thank you, sir. I will not comply either. So, I thank everybody for here. Luke, thank you, sir, for inviting me. And everybody else that's in support, I do appreciate it. Thank you, Second Amendment. And again,
All the Bill of Rights. Yes.
Yeah.
thank you, ma'am. You're up for re-election soon, are you not, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I say,
Sir, this is not about me, it's about you guys.
that's right. It's no, sir. It's about you, because everybody on this council has the right to do what's right. And we stand up here and we speak our minds, and it doesn't matter to some of you. Some of you already have your thoughts in mind anyway. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. None of this is going to affect any of you. I know that. But we're still here. We're showing you that we're passionate about what we're doing.
And I hope you take that into consideration, each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
Henderson, followed by Kim Norton, and then Ellen Weiss.
Hi, my name is Esther Huddleston. I'm in support of 2018 Jesse Sumner's ordinance. I'm against 2025. And the reason why is because if you pass that ordinance, 2025, any of you can make amendments to that ordinance and put restrictions without us knowing, because you only put announcements up and you expect people to check your borough website to check on these announcements all the time. And I have evidence that you do not need an ordinance to shut down a shooting range. I have an article, Big Lake Shooting Range on hold by Alaska Public Media, January 21st, 2015. The borough was going to sell 80 acres of land to the youth for shooting sports, which would give the youth opportunities to be in the Olympics and scholarships for colleges. And that was shut down. Kai Blukas, a realtor, was against it. And I'm wondering, did Kai Blukas pick up the 80 acres? And Dan Mayfield did not support that shooting range that the borough was going to give to the youth. And I have this article if anybody wants to see it. And yeah, so that there is evidence that the borough already has power to shut down shooting ranges without 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim Norton.
Hi, I'm Kim Norton, and I appreciate the time to speak to you for just a minute. I too support Mr. Summers rescinding the 2025. We don't need this. We need you guys to focus on roads and things like that. Not what I can do on my private property, whether I can have friends come over and shoot, whether I can, and the other part I wanted to say too is with the sacrificial lamb, or there she is. I just wanted to say that, you know, we can just go talk to our neighbors if something's not the way it is, the way you want. You can talk to them and say, hey, you know, this is going on. Would it be nice if we could have a little quieter for this period of time? There's also limits on that anyway. The noise is one part of it, but I feel like it's a backdoor way to get into regulating more and more of our gun rights. And I feel like our private property, we don't need to have this regulation to tell us what we can do and what we can't do. Focus on the things for the public, not this private thing. And another thing on land use, when you buy a piece of property, it's your responsibility to go and look all around and look at the covenants and look at what's happening. You can't buy a piece of property and then later want to change your neighbors. You don't do that. It's called covenants. And so you have to be smart about it. If you're gonna invest in a place, think about it. Read up on what's going on. Don't go into it and say, okay, now I want you to change this and this. I really appreciated the people that organized the little thing that we did that Thursday, where we came and demonstrated that we have a concern here. I would really hope that you will show this body the respect that we need and should have. I understand the safety issue that she talked about, but if there's something that's not safe, that's where you'd call the law enforcement. We don't have to have every inch of our life, every inch of where we are regulated. It's just too much. That's why we live here, and I've been here 30 years, 33. And so that's all I have to say. I just want you, I hope you'll really respect. I remember watching
Bill Clinton at a place in Oregon, and they were talking about the snowy owls and all this stuff. And he nodded that he understood what these people were saying. He turned right around and did the absolute opposite, and I'm hoping you won't do that.
My name is Ellen Vandevis, and I greet you all. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm not sure where the idea came from that anyone's trying to take away anyone's guns. This is not anything to do with taking away your Second Amendment rights, taking away your firearms, taking away your shooting. No one here is talking about that. The purpose of the 025, is that what it is, says it's about who's jeopardizing whom. So shoot away, but you don't always know where your bullets are going. I don't dare hike in an area, in the Jonesville area, for example. I hear shots coming from every which way. I'm in the moose range enjoying it with you all. I don't know where the shots are coming from or going. And so we're looking for you to come up with ways that we can do the land use where we're not using every inch of land for shooting that goes every which way, but to look for where we can have it safe, just so that the rest of us aren't scared to share our outdoors in this beautiful Mat Valley. So noise, safety, land use, property values, those are the things we need to work out together. But keep in mind, no one wants to take away your guns. I'm hoping for a roundtable where we can resolve this with a good ear to those who have seen what the bad apples have done, shooting up every bit of our beautiful areas and saying, that's our right.
Group think with the people that think like you.
We want some responsibilities to go with the rights. Give it a good think. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk?
I just wanted to say something to the audience. People are up here giving their opinion, and that's very important for this body to hear. When you're interrupting speakers, it's not giving them their First Amendment right. So please do that. Please let people speak, no matter what side you're on. It's important.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Philip Somerville, followed by Linda Sloan.
Yes, good evening. My name is Phil Somerville, and I'll try to keep my remarks pretty brief and to the point. I'm not against guns. I've been a gun owner and a shooter in several states, including Alaska. I happen to enjoy shooting. I also am concerned for people's safety and their health and their ability to peacefully enjoy their property without a lot of banging going on at any time of the day or night. I've been outdoors in the moose range when I hear shots ringing out a little distance away. I have no idea what direction they're shooting, where the bullets may go. That is a problem for me. And I think the issue of incompatible use of land is also a big one. I have never, anywhere I've lived, had any sense that somebody was going to take my guns away. And so I'm in favor of 025. I think removing the ability of the Assembly to reasonably regulate facilities that are potentially very dangerous if people don't do them right. I think to take away your ability to do something to prevent that is a huge mistake. So I'm in favor of 025. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Followed by Linda Sloan, please. And going to be Lisa Pettit and Mark Truck.
Hello,
Assembly members, and thank you for letting me speak. I'm Linda Sloan, lifelong Alaskan. I was born in Rino, and I've lived in Alaska for years, and in Mat-Su since 1983, I think. This has been an education for me because I've probably read about or heard about the intensity of emotion of gun owners that feel that their guns are going to be taken away or their rights are going to be taken away. And I had never understood how emotional an issue is for everybody that has this point of view, and also how many theories and fears and conspiracies are feared by the group. But I feel like I have the right to express how I feel about things too. And I guess my thoughts about the Second Amendment is that it does give the right to bear arms, but it shouldn't give the right to shoot whenever or wherever one pleases. And we live in a society, and hopefully a civilized society, where we should be able to come up with some reasonable regulations that allow people to live safely and enjoy the outdoors without fears of being in the crossfire of guns. And I've been on trails and have experienced this. But I guess I don't know exactly what's in the Proposition 025, but I would like you to keep working at it and not to table it. That is a big concern, that it just be shoved under the table and not dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sloan. Lisa Pettit, followed by Mark Troutman, and then Ryan Engel.
Hello, my name is Lisa Pettit. I am also a lifelong Alaskan. Lived in the same place for the last 40 years, which is adjacent to outdoor shooting range that is being built. So the way things are now, this is a safety issue. It's happening here, and it can happen anywhere in the borough to anyone. Someone can buy property adjacent to you, haul in some fill, make a berm, right up to or maybe even over your property line. Call it NRA standards and bring people out from their gun shop to test the firearms they sold them. Shooting right towards 3 different landowners of 40 years with successful businesses. How and why does the new landowners, who does not even reside there, rights supersede the safety and rights of residents who lived there for generations? As far as design recommendations for outdoor ranges, I feel that this ordinance is dealing with some of those issues. The construction of this outdoor range has not taken into consideration stray bullets or if they're going into water. I'm pretty sure some of the range could actually be going across a borough road, that someone could be driving by and catch a stray bullet. So that might be of concern. And I think that something should be done before someone gets hurt. The borough has, someone else mentioned, say back in '78, when the landowners that are being affected by this, the borough population was about 17,000. It was less than 20,000 people. Today it's over 100,000. And I don't see how people can think that we can all just coexist peacefully and have these kinds of land uses that are so incompatible be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pettit. Mark Troutman, followed by Brian Engel, and then
My name is Mark Troutman. I'm a 60-year resident. I am a retired state trooper, 20 years with troopers. I also attended the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. I'm going to play a recording for you. That was within 100 yards of my house. My wife and I were planting potatoes in our field. I had a 100-horse diesel tractor with earplugs in, and I could hear this. And I'm not against the Second Amendment. I'm for the Second Amendment. I own more guns than I need, but I think there needs to be restrictions on shooting ranges. And I am really surprised that the person that the owner of this property talked to from the borough said, yeah, you can put a shooting range there. Why doesn't somebody go out and at least survey the land to make sure they're not shooting at my house, my neighbor's houses? This seems getting out of hand. I'm not an attorney, but my wife is. I think the day will come, if this continues, that we will be in court. And the borough may be part of it because our ag parcels are borough ag parcels. I think we have a right that you protect our ag parcels. The previous speaker's property has been infringed on. Debris has been pushed onto her property. If she wants to clear that property to plant oats, grass, whatever she wants to put in there, somebody on a tractor is driving straight toward the borough that's on her property line. Now, that's not right. Mr. Sumner, I hope you win your election, because I sure as hell don't want you to have to be my representative out there anymore. You failed to take a resolution the Fisher Community Council passed, and you refused to bring it to the Assembly. That's not right. We have 220 acres. I pay a lot of taxes. I expect some representation for that taxation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Followed by Brian Inman. I'm sorry?
Am I next or someone else?
You are next. And then after Mr. Inman will be Eugene Carl Haberman, and then Rob Will.
Brian Endel. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Assistant Borough Manager, Assembly, and staff. I'm against this shooting range regulation. I was before I ran for Assembly, I was during when I ran for Assembly, and I am after. It's no good. The original, or this time around, the argument started between two individuals. The borough had no business getting into that argument, none whatsoever. It could have been solved between those two individuals. They could have talked or whatever. They could have got, if there was problems, and let me stop and say something real quick. Thank you, Assembly Member Sumner, for all that you've done for this Assembly. Sometimes those people that do things for the Assembly that are right and just do not get recognized. So, the way that you're going around this actually impacts every single person here, because it deals with property rights. You're actually overlaying zoning on everybody's property through the whole borough. So that's, in effect, theft, because you're taking away property rights from people who already have it. Theft. That's all I really had to say. I have one other thing to add. Jesus is coming back soon. There's a number of you that need to repent. because the time is short.
My name is Eugene Carl Harriman. I'm an Alaska resident for over 40 years. Lived in Anchorage for over 20 years, in the top for 20 years, in the Valley, currently in the Valley resident. To follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. I'm really glad to see so many of the public here at this meeting tonight. But the norm to the meetings I attend is many times I'm the only one for the public at a planning commission meeting, except for maybe the applicant who has an issue with marijuana or whatever. And over there in the break room, Assembly had a meeting Saturday for 5 hours. I was the only one with the public, but then the agenda was all it said was Assembly planning session, and so how the public is going to know what that's all about. But the kicker is on this one. I will address the comments that were addressed, but maybe since I'm known as a specialty of public process, one of the items is a resolution dealing with the shooting issue is on the consent agenda. It was introduced and heard for tonight. Is that a fair chance for the public to have their say? It's fast-tracked. Such a complicated issue it is, a concern with the public, and we're seeing here a number of people here have concern on that issue, one way or the other. The fact is, you're fast-tracking it. You have it at this meeting, and you're making a decision at this meeting, and you change the order of audience participation. And then toward the end is with the same type of item, dealing with shooting, is referred to the Planning Commission. Yeah, good luck on the Planning Commission. I remember the Planning Commission, how they operate, where the chair tells Eileen Patterson when she was on the Planning Commission, you're not allowed to ask me, when I'm testifying, a question. That's the state of the Planning Commission. It's not changed. Where's the fairness? Where's the openness? And what's happened here is really concern of mine is this. The civility of people listening to one another has gone to a really bad state here. It's continued nationally, it's continued in other meetings I attend, but it's continued here tonight. We need to hear from each other. We need to respect each other. We need to listen to each other. And in the process, it needs to be done in such a way the governor makes a decision. It's more likely in the public interest when the process is done right and it's heard from the people. So that ends my comments with 10 seconds to spare. Thank you.
Followed by Ashley, I believe, and David
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. My name is Robert Wells. So I'm another one of the neighbors. I have a small house and my daughter has a small adjacent residence, and we are 900 feet downrange from the targets. I spoke to my neighbor when he moved into the neighborhood. I wanted to meet my new neighbor. He had been shooting. We went up, we looked at it. He needed a utility easement. I gave it to him. I went back with him again and said, gee, you're right next between me and Mr. Mayfield to the property line. And your targets are going right on to Miss Pettit's property. The range, the trees were pushed onto her property, and they're just trees. But my neighbor said he was going to build a range to NRA standards, and I believed in it. didn't happen. Shooting kept happening. I'm standing in my greenhouse, potting my dahlia plants, and when that recording runs, it runs for a long time. And I can feel it in my chest. And if I want to go down to my other greenhouses, I'm walking right towards the fire. And there is no berm. This is not a safe range. I want to see the Second Amendment protected. I want to see what gentlemen have described as a safe, well-maintained shooting range. But this is not. And this issue, sometime on your term on the Assembly, you'll hear about it in every district. And I spent a few years in those chairs. So, please move this on to the Planning Commission. Let's have a constructive dialogue. Let's talk about how we can protect the Second Amendment and my property rights. I've lived here for 60 years almost now, 40 years in the same location. The place has grown. We all know that it's going to change, it's going to grow more. We need better land use and safety so that we can live here and enjoy this great place together.
Thank you very much as well. George Castley, I believe is the name. And followed by James as well, and then Daniel Ince, A-E-N-T-Z, I believe.
Okay, I'm George Costley, C-O-S-T-L-E-Y. I did not even intend to say anything here today. Actually, I thought the list was a sign-in list back there for everybody, but since I'm here anyway, okay, all I want to say is I'm supporting Jesse Sumner here. A lot of the people that have been coming up here wanting to regulate the ranges, and this guy that was just up here, he's talking about somebody putting a range in his backyard and it's dangerous to him downrange. My thoughts on this is, okay, anybody that puts a range together like that is an idiot, okay? And if I want to put a range on my property, I don't think it really is any of your business. If I'm doing something that's endangering my neighbors, then that should be between me, civil issues in court, or law enforcement. I don't think there's a reason when I bought my property 25 years ago, I bought unrestricted property. My neighbors down below me started a subdivision and they come up and wanted me to join in their subdivision with the covenants. No, what I do on my property is my business, as long as I'm not endangering anybody. I don't care what my neighbors do on their property if they're not bothering me. Like I said, I didn't plan to say anything, but since my name was called, here I am. I do say, Neil back here, I know Neil's been fighting this with you guys for years now. Neil has been trying to get a range for his high school students to shoot. Last time I talked to Neil told me that he's coaching 5 high school teams. He has 20 of his shotgun shooters this year that got scholarships. And I know for sure Neil has a hard time just finding places for these kids to shoot. I don't think you guys should be making it any harder to get good ranges set up out here. And a lot of the people that were up here complaining about the ranges, to me, when I was listening to them, I hear them making points from my side. The people that were complaining about Jonesville and everybody shooting all over, then why wouldn't you want that on a legitimate range? It just doesn't make any sense to me what some of the arguments against the ranges are. So, like I said, I didn't plan on saying anything. My name was called, here I am, and you got my views. Go ahead.
Dave McCabe.
Mr. Deputy Mayor and Assembly, my name is Dave Maxwell. Thank you for taking the brief. I would like you to please consider carefully what you are seemingly forging ahead in regards to developing these new gun range proposals. The origins of the issue are deeply concerning to me. I understand that the proposals have come because of two neighbors having a dispute. Is this really an issue for our assembly? And I have to look at each one of you. Is it really? Can anybody on the assembly explain to the people of Mat-Su why you feel the need to do the job that maybe law enforcement would be better equipped to do? Seriously. There's all kinds of disputes. You're gonna get into marital disputes? I mean, what's next? I mean, seriously, this is just it's overreach. And I think that's a pretty common trait in the governmental arena. It's called overreach. And I would just consider that that's a very concerning thing. The other option here is one that our country was founded upon and certainly works when applied. And that is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your strength, and all of your mind. And second, to love your neighbor as yourself. There's your answer. We don't need to regulate here. We simply need to be adults and treat one another as you want to be treated. It's really not that difficult, now, is it?
I don't know if we're out of order. I'm Mr. Sense. I'm Mr. Sense. I don't know if we're out of order.
No, you're fine, sir. I just couldn't read your writing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Assembly members, I'd like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Unlike the other gentleman who he wasn't planning on saying anything, I was planning on saying something, but it's already been said. So I'd just like to retweet some things that I think are very important. This last gentleman hit the nail on the head. If you have neighbors that have some difficulties, they need to work that out rather than go through a monumental zoning infringement upon the whole borough. That affects hundreds of thousands of people. And a few other things that, it's, the intent is to operate within the borough shooting ranges, trying to minimize the likelihood that people, domestic animals or properties will get jeopardized. So it's kind of a safety issue, but I ask, how many issues, how many safety mishaps or injuries have we had from shooting ranges historically in this state? I've been shooting a long time, I don't know of any, and I'm sure I would have heard of some, and there may be some accidental discharge at a firing range, but that might affect the people at the range itself. I don't know of no occurrence where anyone was injured from any shooting ranges. And the shooting ranges that you're talking about here are for commercial use, educational, and nonprofit shooting. So the people who are out skiing, cross country, great sport by the way, if you hear somebody shoot, it's because they don't have access to a nonprofit, commercial, or educational range. So the more that we restrict an opportunity to have those ranges, the more you're going to hear it out there cross-country skiing. So I think it enhances safety by reducing the regulation. And for all of the individuals who are concerned about the Second Amendment, to answer that question, it is tied together. The number of rounds that you have in your magazine determine, it infringes the style of your gun, and also the amount of shooting ranges. It's all an infringement. So I only got a few seconds left, but I'd like to thank you for listening. There's a lot of wisdom in this room, so we're depending on you to sort it out. Thank you.
Neil Moss, followed by Robin Turk and Ron Johnson. Welcome, Mr. Moss.
My name is Neil Moss. I'm a 35-year resident of the Valley, 31 years in business here in the Valley. And for the last 16 years, I've been the president of Alaska Youth Education Shooting Sports. You've heard people mention the range that we tried to get from the assembly. Some of you know firsthand what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into all that. I'm also not going to stand here and go on about the Second Amendment, because I assume all of you as elected officials support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Alaska. So let's move on. This all started, I've been in this since day one, and it all started over a dispute between two property owners. One of them was here. I used to live in that neighborhood. I know the neighborhood. I don't know exactly where the shooting's going on. I don't care. If it's being done unsafely, call the troopers. It's not your job as assembly people to regulate gun ranges. It's not your job to determine what is safe and what's not safe. It's also not the Planning Commission's job to determine what is safe. Show me your credentials as an expert on gun range, on firearms at all. I can show you a wallet full. Show me the credentials of the Planning Commission that's got the expertise to determine where a gun range should be. Right now, a permit's not needed. It shouldn't be needed. No one is going to spend thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a gun range that's not safe, that can be shut down by one lawyer in 5 minutes in a courtroom. It's not going to happen. I don't know where Mr. Wells says they're shooting up there, that there's no berms or there's no backstop. I haven't seen a range. I'd be happy to go look at it if anybody wanted me to, but if it's not safe, this isn't the place to address it is in a courtroom or down at the trooper office, which might lead to the courtroom. But that's where it should be addressed. Not here, not tonight. One little note, the camel's nose under the tent. Once you go down that road and start regulating any type of firearms, who's going to put on the range? Who's going to stop you? Maybe not you, but what about the next assembly that's up here? Or the one after that? Or the one 20 years from now? If you let it start now, it's a mistake. Mr. Sumner, you've introduced the resolution, 2 seconds, to shelve this whole mess. I encourage you all to vote with him and get rid of this right now.
Hello, my name is Robin Turk, and I learned to shoot when I was 12 years old. When my kids were old enough to shoot, I became an NRA certified instructor, so they would have that opportunity to learn how to be safe and use guns correctly. I think everyone in this room respects the fact that we need to be safe. So when I go to a trailhead and find people shooting from their trucks down the trail, I begin to wonder and know that these are the exceptions. Everyone here would be shocked at seeing that. But that's what happens when regulations are born. They are born because somebody was not being safe or protecting the rest of the people. I sat here tonight and listened to everybody, and by the time the last few people finished speaking, I was confused. What are we really asking for? What? I want to be safe. I have a gun safe full of guns. I spent years on the Matanuska River hunting and trapping. That's the lifestyle that I loved. But I want to be safe out there. And this ordinance, I don't know if it's the answer, the regulation. Something has to happen so we have safe places to shoot. So we have places to train our kids. What's stopping these, we just have the new Mont Road shooting range that people have said is great. Why aren't there more? Why was somebody compelled to build in a neighborhood and start a shooting range? In a not completely residential, but I know where those guys live. I wouldn't want it next to my house, and that's why we don't have a shooting range out by Menard Center, because nobody wants it in their backyard. But I don't know. So I don't even know whether to say if I'm for or against the regulation, because I'm not sure that it makes the most sense. But it seems to me that we need to have good shooting ranges. And that's the bottom line. We need to be safe. I don't want some guy shooting down the trail at the end of the road where, by the way, it is illegal to shoot on, from, or across the road. Anyway, my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Good evening, my name is Ron Johnson. I'm a resident of Dubuque. That's Assembly District 1. I'm here to fully support Mr. Sumner and Mr. Mayfield. Mr. Mayfield, did you withdraw your support of resolution serial number 20-018?
I did, sir.
Okay, I was here testifying a few years ago when Neil was trying to get that 80 acres out by you. And I'm afraid with your withdrawal of this, Mr. Mayfield, you have firmly owned the tag of anti-shooting sports, and we will remember that. But let's go on further. I want to make quite clear, I support Mr. Sumner's 20-018 resolution. A lot of this is misguided. People have come up here and testified about things against this ordinance that they don't understand what the ordinance is. The ordinance is nothing more than regulate shooting ranges. It doesn't address noise, and it doesn't address errant shooting. We already have noise laws in the borough, and we also have reckless endangerment laws. So if there's unwarranted shooting, address that with the state troopers. We have reckless endangerment. If you're shooting unsafely, that's reckless endangerment. The state troopers will come and investigate. I was a longtime supporter of the NRA Foundation. I'm a past president. Several years ago, we a long time ago realized that part of the problem with shooting sports in the state of Alaska was lack of shooting ranges. It's been testified before, we've only got a couple of ranges available. If we want to stop, the best way to stop errant shooting, in my belief, is to make more ranges available. I think the Assembly, we have lots of borough land. The Assembly should be looking at ways to make safe places to shoot. If we want to stop the errant shooting, make a safe place for us to shoot. I know about this. I live in Dubuque. I went through the Connect River Public Use Area. That was about a 7-year process. We now have a safe place to shoot in Dubuque. But that doesn't address, we've got a big borough. We've got 2 outdoor ranges and an indoor range. We should be ashamed of ourselves. We're a shooting and a firearms state. If you want to educate young people and women, you've got to have a place to train them for safety and education. So I think that this shooting range ordinance, it's just nothing more than a backdoor to land use permits. That's one of the reasons that so many of us are opposing this, and I urge you to support Jesse Sumner's resolution. Tell the planning department to drop it. Thank you.
I'll even say thank you to you, Mr. Johnson. Janet Johnson.
Hello, my name is Janet Johnson. Thank you for letting me speak.
going to echo all the things that my husband said and just encourage you all to think really hard and support Jesse's resolution and drop this until someday when you can figure out what it is you're really doing, because just like all the things that my husband said about regulating. Thank you.
And again, I can't quite read the last name, but I believe it's S-O-J-K-N. Yes, thank you.
And good evening, my name is Tom Soika. Well, I'm more confused than I've ever been about anything. And I usually can speak and take a position, but I see the concern on both sides, I really do. And it's, I'm not sure it can be achieved here tonight. I don't believe that you can, turn down the resolution or support the ordinance. Because in truth, as we all are been hearing, it's safety, it's concerned, a conscious concern to be, know that we are safe, and that if people are randomly shooting off in the distance, it's troubling, it really is. And we're talking about people's lives. And when you folks keep bringing up about the two people that brought all this to bear, and this is why we're here, I wonder, is that just by chance? And it maybe is, because the real part of this conversation is not so much the two homeowners that can't seem to get it right, but as many people have said here tonight that have been living here for many years, as well as I have, times are changing. We're going to become a small little Anchorage pretty soon. I mean, it's inevitable. The population truly is 100,000 plus. So I'm just wondering if what we're talking about here tonight should not really be decided one way or the other. I wonder if we shouldn't table all of this and go into more discernment and come back with a better agenda. Yes, shooting ranges are very important. I do not deny that. But what concerns me is you just can't have regulation on that. You have to have more depth of the safety concern. You need to really think it out more. That's my true thinking. I have listened to all these people here tonight, and everybody has a great point. I think Murph O'Brien expressed it well. Mark Troutman expressed it well. And when you go and look back at what they had to share, I think there is where I'd like to settle in the argument that we really need to think this out. I take the position that everything should be tabled to go into more discernment from the Assembly. I'm not at all against regulation, and it's important because we're talking about one of these days there's going to be a fatality. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Brad MP, followed by Vern Ruth.
Brian M.B. Butte. I just come here to support Jesse's deal resolution. But I don't think you guys should be doing any of that stuff. I mean, you guys make these CUPs and never enforce them. I mean, there's no enforcement, there's no teeth by the borough. I mean, all it is an ordinance or regulation, but there's nothing. I mean, I live right next to the Connect River, and yeah, the shooting died down since the Mod Road gun range in there, but it still goes on constantly. I mean, even in the winter time, it's going on. you're not gonna put an end to unregulated shooting by this, and I think you guys are way out of depth. You should be working on other things than just this waste of time. I mean, it's just and don't mess around with Second Amendment rights. I mean, see what's happening in the rest of the country. It's gonna happen here if you guys keep doing it. That's my opinion.
Good evening, members of the Assembly and Mr. Deputy Mayor. My name is Vern Rubright. I'm the former mayor of the city of Wasilla. And I can remember the argument concerning shooting ranges out here. I tried to get the borough moving in that direction because they have available land, 20-acre parcels, etc., to put up something that's going to be sufficient. If anybody's fired on a military range, and I've done plenty of that in my time, there's not a lot to it. It's a matter of the round goes out there and you got to stop it. Stop its inertia, all right? So we came up with a plan in Wasilla, and it is the law there now. It's been on the books since 2009, but everybody was on the misunderstanding at first because not in my backyard, and we have missed that point. Because I tried to do that for the betterment of the city and to provide some people some safe places to train. And the issue was, those who have ever been in Germany, in the middle of Berlin, the army range there they inherited from the Nazis, it has baffles in it and berms. It's not all that fancy. It isn't what I saw that was coming down from this borough government that became very chilling and restrictive. And it said, well, we're not going to regulate your private property, it's just for your own shooting. And that's the issue, is safety. There is plenty of law in the state books, as the borough attorney can attest to, and plenty of remedies in a court that this gentleman's wife, who's a lawyer, knows about. So if you get a dispute between neighbors, so be it. Avail yourself of those proper legal remedies. But we were talking about nonprofits and shooting ranges for profit, etc. And when I looked at that, I said, that is incredibly chilling and economically chilling to anybody. You can certainly come up with a better plan to figure out what we're going to do with the core area of this borough. As large as it is, and it is the size of West Virginia and Rhode Island thrown in, and they have more ranges in those two states to include Rhode Island, and if you blink your eyes going north to south, you're already in Connecticut from Massachusetts. If you ever drove through that 36-mile corridor, and it's high speed. They've got 16 ranges, one range for over 1 million population in that little den. And they have enough ranges to accommodate 5,000 citizens, and these are open ranges. What do we have, 2? The one down on the highway, which I've used off and on for years, you've got to pay a lot of bucks to get into that place. And when I bought my property from Don Church, a retired trooper of a lot of years and a lot of history here in the Church family, I could shoot on my property inside the city of Wasilla. Then the city council said, thou shalt not shoot, 1980, but they had no enforcement. It didn't change much because it was pretty rural. I get it. Excuse me, the guy across the road still shoots each borrowed side of the road. It is an issue of safety. But this ordinance you're trying to pass didn't even deal with that other broad issue. Thank you.
Joe Irvine, followed by Elsie Howard and Seth Saxon.
Good evening, my name is Joe Irvin, and I am here speaking in opposition to RS 20-18, rescinding the work by the borough staff addressing issues related to outdoor shooting facilities in Mat-Su Borough. And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, the reality of it is we're experiencing rapid population growth, as many people have already mentioned, and subdivision growth. Most of these new subdivisions are located in areas that were previously considered rural. Increasing population with smaller lot sizes and higher density creates potential conflicts unless adequately addressed. Previously, in the resolution in Mr. Sumner's resolution. It mentions in one of the whereases, it mentions that no one came forward to sign up for the working group. I know that there were at least 2 people that filled out applications who were never contacted. So I don't know how credible that statement is. This resolution states, I quote, "This is a contentious matter," and as we can see it is. And on balance, I continue quoting, "and on balance, the regulation of shooting ranges will not benefit borough residents, and the borough should focus its attention on other matters," unquote. Okay? Just because an issue is contentious does not excuse borough staff or the borough assembly members from addressing it. In fact, these are the very issues that citizens need their local government to focus on. So, under due consideration, I hope you move forward. It's a long way to go to get these resolutions or this regulation and ordinance considered and worked through, but don't abrogate your responsibility by kicking this down the road and saying it's not your job. It is your job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Howard, L.D. Howard.
So I have here, red light means you're not going forward with 2025. These are the people who are opposed to this. This is as of only January 31st. There's plenty more, because I know I hand-delivered about 50 to 60 more this morning. I don't know if y'all can see this. This is opposition. This is public comment and forum. They want this to go through. Now, I agree with most of everything everyone said there, except for earlier this evening, someone said the borough needs to stop wasting their money. No. The borough needs to stop wasting our money. Yeah. This is our money. You are mouthpieces for us. We elect you to be our mouthpieces. We elect you to do the will of the people. Yeah. We do not elect you to overreach your authorities, to sit higher above us. You're supposed to be one of us. And obviously you're hearing, not only here, but I know phone calls, because every time I make a video lately, and I thank God for all these people here, within an hour and a half, I have 1,200 plus people watch my videos and start commenting and calling. You all thought it was impossible to get 600 plus people to show up here on a Friday day. We ain't going away. We are united and we are silent no more. Now, to address a few things that other people are involved in, I'm actually personally involved with part of this deal. I will tell you, I've had the state troopers called on us no less than 5 times shooting on this property. Now, it's not a range either. This is private property. We don't charge anyone to go to this. They come as a courtesy as friends of ours. So actually, this whole proposal doesn't even address the simple fact of what these people have against us. And I'll guarantee there is a berm. Actually, if you listen to the gentleman's audio tape, you can hear clink. There's $3,000 in steel targets there. This isn't something we've taken lightly. There's a lot of money into dozing land and excavating and everything like that. 5 times we've had the state troopers come there. 5 times we could have been charged with irresponsible discharge of a firearm, which is a Class B felony. Would pretty much ruin my business. I run a gun store. I am a firearms instructor. So I'd pretty much be without a job. I'd probably be in jail. I'm here today, guys. Because those state troopers got there and saw the fact we were not breaking the law. We were well within our rights to do what we were doing. So, like I said, we're not nonprofit, we're not anything. We are allowed to shoot on our private property. The gentleman says brought up this deal. He's in a non-zoned area. Setback for that's 15 feet. You move to a non-zoned, unzoned area with no CCNRs or homeowners association. People who want these things move to those locations. Sorry, that's the way it works. Actually, I purposely chose a place to live that no longer had a homeowners association because I don't need people telling me to do my land. I enjoy my freedom. I didn't know if that when I lived in Oregon. So, I don't need it. Like I said, I know how many more I took off and everything like that. If you guys are truly mouthpieces of the people, it's not a hard decision to not push forward 2025 and to go ahead and go with Jesse Sumner, a true representative of the people, on 20-018. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
I am here today because there is an extreme amount of confusion. I believe you all received my email that I sent at about 1:30 this morning, 1:53 this morning. Went into pretty good detail, going through all 12 pages. The primary complaint, as Mr. Howard has stated, is between people using their private land, not for commercial or educational purposes. The other thing people are dealing with is places like Jonesville, Zero Lake. It used to be Reflections Lake, Site Bay 19 Nuclear SAM Site, the silos within the KGB, and other ad hoc ranges. They're not regulated. Jonesville is a particular problem. I refuse to go shoot there because I've seen people shoot down the road. Gun owners won't go shoot there. The reason people do is because they don't have any other places to go. Maud Road is filled to capacity and expanding. Matt Valley Sportsman's Range is filled to capacity and expanding. Even the Upper Susitna Shooters Association has expanded their 1,000-yard range very expensively recently. There are enough people up here to drive financially these expansions on these ranges. We need more. We don't need to regulate them into obscurity through the financial impossibility that these rules set forth. We need to give people an opportunity to go to a place other than Site Bay, Jonesville, formerly Reflections Lake, and Jim Creek. My father's on the Mat-Su Trails Committee. He used a dump truck to clean that place up. It took a great many years and a lot of 4x4 clubs. People still shoot out there where they're not supposed to. Site Bay 19 Nuclear SAM Site, abandoned by the military, bought up by who knows what anymore. People still go out and shoot there. I know, because I still find the grass. None of it's military, none of it's police. It's civilian 45-70 government. People still get back there and shoot. And these are shooting in solid concrete structures. God only knows where they can go. And it's destroying history at the same time. Why are you trying to prevent people from preserving safe places like Maud Road and expand them to get them away from these places? You need to either provide for or allow people to provide for these things. If you don't, you're going to make it worse. Because if you pass this resolution, more people are going to be out at Site Bay. More people are going to be at Zero Lake. And I've seen the place at Zero Lake. I've been there a few times. I don't shoot there anymore because it's trashed. It's where Jim Creek was in 2006. Same thing with Jonesville. Jonesville was right there where Jim Creek was in 2006. I remember the burnt cars. I remember help pulling them out. The reason why we are opposed to this is because you are going to drive people to do more of that. And we don't want that at all. We want safe places to shoot. Maud Road's a perfect example. The Upper Susitna Shooting Range is a perfect example. Those ranges are an hour away from me, and I live basically by Walmart. Thank you.
Richard, you're the next up, followed by Norm Stout and Jim Burnham, I believe.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. My name is Mark Richard. We live in the most blessed country in this world, quite frankly. We enjoy freedoms that were bought and paid for by over 666,441 American lives ever since Lexington and Concord to date. All of our rights have been paid in blood, every one of them. We don't have a gun problem. We don't have a range problem. We have a morality, a human problem. You take away guns and our rights to practice or such things, then the only people that will have those guns, as has been well known throughout the country, are the outlaws. I've been in that world. It ain't no place to be. If it wasn't for the good Lord, I wouldn't be here right now. I serve my country willingly. When you take away our rights, you're spitting on 666,441 lives that willingly went out there and gave it so that everybody in this nation could live free in liberty. And there's only one reason that we're still here. Mao Zedong said, you don't want to attack America because there's an American with a gun behind every blade of grass, and he was right. That's the only thing. It is God, guns that made this country free. You cannot legislate morality. It must be taught in the home. Because without it, what is the antithesis of immorality? Hatred. Why are these things necessary? They shouldn't be. We should band together as a nation and show this world the God that we serve is true. The lives and the very idea of liberty is not cheap and it is not free. Every man, woman that's ever laid down their life, whether in peacetime or in war, he did it for every one of you and every one of us. And I've seen them spin on them, call them dogs because of a few idiots. We don't have a weapons problem. If there's a contention between two individuals on private property shooting guns, then people need to take it to the court. They need to take them off. They need to do what the man said. Love God and love your neighbor. Instead of fighting and picking amongst each other. Because this is just going to destroy this nation. And I guarantee you, I don't want my children growing up under communist tyranny. I've seen it firsthand. It is not a pretty thing. Whether or not we have guns, that's our right. They were bought and paid for. I don't believe the price should be set at naught. I mean, if you take away our rights, we're
Thank you for 180 seconds to talk. I learned to shoot a gun when I was a kid. My mama taught me in the backyard. It was necessary because we lived out in the country, and it was protection from man and beast. Now, I moved up here to Alaska a long time ago. I lived in Anchorage for 13 years, then I moved to Alaska. Now, I got to move again to stay in Alaska. Maybe. The thing is, I got great-grandchildren now, and I'm going to teach them how to shoot. Do you want me to teach them how to shoot at some place like Zero Lake used to be, or is, Reflection Lake used to be, or you want me to take them down Jim Creek? We need a place, and we need every place. Just like the place I was just at, this very small rifle range where I qualified for muzzleloader. So, you know, reach back, touch a little history, and shoot a gun in a place that is not Mott Road or out here on the highway. Where do you want me to teach my kids to shoot? I'm getting older. My eyesight ain't as good. Hearing's just about a plumb shot. I'm still going to shoot. Where do you want me to shoot? Where do you want me to teach my grandkids and my great-grandkids to shoot? Now, each one of you, elected officials, you're supposed to be our leaders. You're supposed to be our representatives. And I think you need to consider this very seriously. You've heard from both sides, and there's good points on both sides. I got 3 bullet holes in my house. I called the trooper, and there ain't no more bullet holes coming in my house. They're going to shoot. I'm out moose hunting, and I get close to a moose, and suddenly bang, 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 bang. So I went up to find out why. Well, it's a couple of people from Anchorage, and I guarantee you they didn't have a concealed carry. And they were out there shooting, didn't even know it was moose season, didn't know where they were at. You won't give them people someplace to go learn. We'll sort them out, maybe give them some guidance and put them on a different trail than killing one another. So, where do you want me to shoot? Thank you.
All right, that's fine. How about Jim Burnham? I was just going to ask you to state your name for the record, please.
State my name. You can't spell it anyway. It's Jim Burnham.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate it. the next person, sir.
The next person you're calling? Well,
That's all right, I'm a little hard of hearing sometimes too.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Masteller, and thanks for having this session. I'm here to urge you to support passage of 20-025. The main reason for me is that clearly this is a controversial issue, and what you should be doing is referring this to the Planning Commission to get more thorough input from everybody and keep the process rolling. Clearly, shooting ranges are something that can affect a lot of people, and it makes sense to do this at the local level. We're the local government. I think that's the level we should be addressing this issue at, and we are not like it was 30 years ago when I moved here. So I would really urge you to pass 2025 and move it on to the Planning Commission where this process can continue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sasha Pettit, followed by Alan Burrow.
I wasn't planning on speaking either. I'm Sasha Pettit. Thank you guys for hearing from me tonight. And there's a lot of good points on both sides. I understand it. I have a lot of friends who cross country up at Moose Range. My daughter missed Junior Nordic tonight so that I could be here. And but I also just brought her back from Nevada, where I had sent her to get training on a front sight range because there's not a good range for her and my husband here. There have been days they've tried to go up out to Maud Road and it's packed, it's full. They've come back and said, not today. And I'm listening to what everybody's saying, and I'm not sure how regulating ranges are going to affect what we need. I'm also looking at who's here and who's speaking, the booklets that have been brought up, and I would just urge you to listen to the people, listen to your constituents, reach out and talk to them. I feel like some of this could have been avoided if we were just civil and human and talked to each other. I feel like we've gone way down a road that we didn't need to go down if we could have just come together. I think if it's that young lady back there would have gotten everybody in this room, we'd have gone over and said, hey, are you doing something wrong? We'll straighten you out. So I believe that Alaskans are people that love each other, they're good people. It takes me about 20 minutes to get to Maud Road. My husband called me one day and we did a little test, and I could hear his shot about 3 seconds after he fired it across the river in Palmer behind Fairgrounds. So hearing shots echoing around me sometimes don't mean that I'm not safe. And people randomly shooting off, I hear people scoffing and feeling insulted by these phrases, because the first rule of gun safety, which I've taught my children, is always keep a gun pointed in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Always keep the gun unloaded until you're ready to use it. Know where your target is and what's beyond it. Even when I'm out in the woods, I don't shoot at a hill, at the top of the hill, because I don't know what's beyond that horizon. And so I think that Alaskans are a little offended to feel that we need to be regulated when we're already being safe and responsible, the majority of us. Like I said, living in Anchorage, decibels, I used to hear the bass thumping down my street. I'm sure it caused as much ear damage as the gun range from 2 miles away. And people shot up the business where I worked in high school. My house had bullet holes in it out here in the valley. And bad things are gonna happen. But I don't think regulation's the answer.
My name's Alan Dealer, and I'm a disabled veteran, retired. I'm thinking that what I'm hearing tonight, and I'm trying to sum this up, is that you guys are running up against a brick wall. and you had better listen to the people, because we do have elections, we do have methods of recalling you. So I think you better throw this law out and start over again. The other one that I'm hearing is that the last lady made a census for training, and we don't shoot at objects that we can't identify if we're responsible gun owners. And I'm hearing the other side of it is people shooting at houses and towards residential areas, and you can't do that. That's illegal. Those people need to go to jail. And then we're running up against people that or our government that is not enforcing the laws that are already on the books. If you can't do your job, then maybe you people need to step down and we'll let somebody else do it. Put the laws on the books that we need to have as citizens to live reasonable lives in our area. I would expect that from my assembly member, Tam Bovey, and I'm liking what I'm hearing from Jesse Sumner and the support that people are giving him. So I'm going to leave it at that. And yes, we do need our gun ranges, but at the same time we need the freedom to go out and shoot at other sites besides gun ranges, because we may not have the money at the time. So you might want to keep that in mind when you're writing these laws. And yes, we all need to work together. Thank you.
Followed by Jerry Hupp and Chad Whitman. We are nearing the end of our list, so if there are any other speakers who would like to speak, please feel free to go ahead and sign up.
I skipped my name somewhere along the way. Norm Stout.
I'll catch you right at the end, sir. Thank you.
Where do we sign up?
Back corner.
Go ahead, Ms. Spencer, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Celia Spencer, and like many other, I was not intending to speak tonight, but when you are passionate about a topic, you feel moved to do so. I oppose Resolution 2025 and support 2018. I have heard a lot about respect tonight. It's not my intent to disrespect any of you or your positions. I'm not here to tell you how to do your job, because you know your job better than I do. I'm also not here to disrespect those who are in support of 2025. Everybody has their right to an opinion and the right to feel safe. In fact, I want to address that concern that we've heard tonight. I'm sorry to hear that some of you have been in fear for your life, been in fear of danger due to reckless discharge. But the fact is, increased regulation only affects responsible gun owners. Individuals who shoot wild and dangerously are criminals. Criminals don't care about regulation. As a responsible gun owner, we already talked about fundamental rules. I served 5 years in the Marine Corps, and we learned know your target and what lies behind it. And somebody already took the words out of my mouth. Those rules are taught at responsible gun ranges. Those in those harbor environments that are conducive to learning safe gun practices. But increased regulation will only make it more difficult to provide those learning environments. To those who say this resolution isn't here to take our guns, I would reiterate that what many have said already. This resolution sets a precedence, and that is a slippery slope towards infringement. As elected leaders, I hope you respect the crowd here tonight and take into consideration the people that you represent. Thank you for your time.
My name is Jerry Hub. I live on Lazy Mountain. I'm a firearms owner, recreational shooter, hunter. I do not support Resolution 2018. I think folks are making a good point that we do need more ranges in the valley, managed ranges. I've read 2025. I don't see anything in there that threatens Second Amendment rights. What I do see are some common sense recommendations for range standards that are similar to those from the NRA, the National Shooting Sports Foundation. And as a landowner, if a range is going into my neighborhood, I want to know that it's going to be a safe range. And right now, I can't be guaranteed that. So I want to see 2025 continue and go through the public process and consideration by the Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Chad, Rumpel, I believe. And then I'll come back to you, sir. You'll be next, right after Mr. Wright.
Howdy. Chad Rumpel, we're in Walmart. I have to embarrassingly say, I haven't voted much in my life. Just recently started feeling like, maybe I'm part of the silent majority that isn't participating in the voting process. And a lot of voices aren't being heard. People like me maybe support one side or the other, but don't show up to have our voice heard. This is, to me, a proposal of just increased regulation. You can't say it enough times. I don't know what's difficult to understand about the fact that criminals don't obey laws. There's already felony level laws in place for the reckless discharge of a firearm. It's that simple. I don't take up my whole 2 minutes and waste your time. I'll just say I'm going to become very active in voting because this is the kind of stuff that I don't want to see happen to my Alaska. I guess in one short sentence I can say, don't California my Alaska.
No, I'm sorry, I apologize if I missed you.
Norm Stout, 30-year resident up in the Fisher Community Council area, gun owner. I support 25. I do not support 18. First, many of the folks here are misinformed. Mr. Sumner was very good at spreading misinformation, not very good at supporting his constituents. This issue did not come to be just two neighbors arguing. This was an entire community. The entire neighborhood met with this fellow up there, and he was not receptive to anything. Our entire community council member, a huge membership meeting that we had, voted overwhelmingly to support common sense gun rules. This wasn't just two neighbors. And you knew that. Those who think they might want to have a gun range in their neighborhood should think again. Because even if they went, say, 4 times a month, and it totaled 12 hours, that gun range is going to be open for 240 hours. So you're going to try to have a barbecue and you don't want to be at the range? You're going to listen to gunfire. Gun ranges don't belong in residential neighborhoods. Mr. Ryan said it perfectly. This is an incompatible use. And that's the problem, is this fellow brought a gun range up into our residential neighborhood. I've been there 30 years. You know what Mr. Howard said? Even though he just barely moved here, he said, if you don't like the shooting, you should leave and go to Eagle River. He told the 30-year resident, and he just bought 40 acres, is all he bought up there. He told the 30-year resident, that I should leave. Think about that. That'll happen to you, even if you support ranges. And I'm all for ranges, but they need to be regulated. They can't go into residential neighborhoods. Mon Road is not in a residential neighborhood. It's way out there where gun ranges belong. And then Mr. Howard also said that this is just some friends shooting on private property. Mr. Howard was allowing the testing of weapons that he sells from his gun store on that property. That's a commercial operation. It's right in the definition. It doesn't get any simpler than that. A previous speaker mentioned that, we got all these noises in our neighborhood. Well, we put up with each other. But most of those other noises are actually regulated. Loud stereos, that's regulated. Dogs, kennel licenses, regulated. What we don't regulate is incredibly loud shooting that does not stop at the property line. I can hear grouse shrieks from 4 miles away regularly. And it's shotguns with high burns. This fellow in our neighborhood didn't put up any burns. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Steve Renner, followed by Earl Lackey and Ms. Linda Carpenter.
Good evening to each and every one of you. I respect your positions, what you're here to do tonight. I'm in support of Jesse Sumner's proposal to table this issue. And I realize that there are concerns on both sides of the fence. But one thing I do want to address is I'm going to applaud a lot of people, everybody on both sides that is here tonight. Because the duty, and I'm not saying just, I'm saying the duty of the citizens in a Judeo-Christian culture, which is what we are, is to address the lesser magistrate when there are concerns with pending laws or laws that may be infringed upon their rights. So what we have here tonight, I'm going to make this short. I'm going to say, Dan, you're going to have a rough election. I'm sorry to have to say that, but I think it's pretty obvious. But my point here is we're addressing a body, a government body, and I'm not talking to any of you specifically, but basically we're going to a government body here to try to solve a problem that basically created the problem. Why do we have problems with people shooting? I mean, I live up close to the Jonesville area. I remember Jim Creek. Why do those areas exist? No place else to shoot. Okay, people are going to go somewhere and shoot. I live in an unrestricted subdivision, and I can tell you there is not one night that I don't go to bed that I don't hear a lot of shooting. Now, I'm going to tell you, after 47 years there, I feel good about it. Because we haven't had a lot of crime in our neighborhood. I'm going to say one more time, thanks, Jesse, for having the courage. And I'm going to thank the people that took time out of their lives to come here tonight and address the lesser magistrate.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the Borough Assembly. I'm here representing Mad Valley Sportsmen. I'm the president of the Mad Valley Sportsman Shooting Range out here on the Glen Highway. Just a personal issue with this. I'm concerned that the handling the situation. What's happened now is the ordinance that you're presenting. We're at Mad Valley Sportsman, we're in the process, we've got a road going to take part of our driveway, our parking area, and all that sort of stuff. If this ordinance passes, I've got to get a CUP so I can extend my driveway into, we need to buy 50 foot of land from the neighbor. I gotta get a permit to regulate our range that's been there since, the range has been there since '92. The club has started in '65, and now I gotta get a public use permit to regulate, to put my driveway in, because I need 50 feet of the neighbor's property. So what, I mean, this shooting range has been safe. We train people. We've got our state hunter safety classes are done there. All of the different training for the different types of shooting. We do the whole works there at Matt Valley Sportsman. It's indoor. Even the outdoor range has got baffles. It's totally protected. And it's been there for this long, and now I gotta go and put a CUP on it. What's the meaning for it? I don't understand. We don't need it. Thank you.
I would bet that we could address that fairly easily. Brendan Carpenter is the next speaker.
Brendan Carpenter. I've lived here in the valley pretty much my whole life, from the age of 9. Jesse Sumner, I'd like to say thank you very much. I think what you've done is taken a bit of courage. Having lived out here my whole life, generally speaking, I think that the reason this issue seems confusing, I think that probably all of us that are saying they're against 218 and those that are for it, don't necessarily understand all of it. I have a feeling, having lived out here my whole life, that I know that in some areas it's non-zoning. And that's why we moved out to the valley, to get away from Anchorage with all their regulations, and so we move out there. Then you get disgruntled people because it's non-zoned and somebody comes out there and does something different and doesn't agree with everybody else, so then now we want zones. We want regulation. Especially if somebody just doesn't recuse themselves and has the ability to be an elected official and wants to weigh in on it. Vested interest, maybe, maybe not, who knows? But if you want to live in a non-zoned area and you don't want the regulations, how do you complain when something comes in later? You live in a non-zoned area, right? Part of the issue, as I see it, and I wasn't even going to say anything, but it's like we got a bunch of plumbers who are being asked by a small group to wire a house. There's plumbers plumb, they don't wire. Electricians wire, they don't build. Law enforcement regulates. We've heard from former troopers up here a lot. They enforce the law. And if it goes beyond them, then they go to court. There's a correct process. So the confusion isn't this really contentious argument and it's really tough and, oh my God, we're going to talk some more. It could be ended right now. And I'll bet you about half of the people that are for and standing with Jesse might have backed off if you just got rid of the decibel regulation. Words have meaning, and they also have history. Virtually every time a decibel regulation is put in, it's to shut something down. Out here in the valley, fish heads, a bar. Everybody hated it. It was really loud. No, you got to shut it down. So they put this decibel on it. They almost make it. So they changed the ordinance, make it harder. Too much. Too much money to make it fit. So they closed down. In Anchorage, I want to know why you guys want to follow Anchorage. It makes no sense. If you don't like what he's doing, there's a proper process to follow. The reason that there's confusion in this issue is because the proper process is not being followed.
I hope I got that right. Thank you.
Members of the Assembly, my name is Dave Burge. I'll be brief. To me, as I read this
this ordinance, it's directed at stupid people. That we have means, as has been discussed by many people about the state troopers, that can address problem people. But what this ordinance does adversely affects all the people in the room here or who have a range and use it legally and safely. I have a range on my property. I have my son, who's in the room, is an NRA rifle and pistol instructor and a safety officer. And so we make sure everything is done safely. And one of my great joys was bringing my grandson up from Chicago. And he learned that you shoot a pistol vertically, not horizontally, as is the common theme in Chicago. But you're taking away that right to do that with this ordinance. And I would ask that you reconsider, and do away with it. Mr. Sumner's proposal. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bert Huftelling. Dan, I'd like to let you know you are in my district. I'm from this Big Lake. It's going to be a very tough run for you this year for Senate. If I remember right, that's what you're going to be running for. I'm going to be in...
Like I say, this is not about me, it's about you guys. Go ahead and...
Oh, it is about you, though. It's about all of us. You're talking about our Second Amendment right here affecting, just because of an ordinance of a gun range that started because of a dispute of people illegally possibly firing guns. I know I'm more concerned about the people that come from out of Anchorage because they can't shoot the guns in the city because they'd be arrested just like that. But if they come out here and shoot it, they see a nice wide open area, they pull on up, they look around, they don't see anybody out there, they pull out their guns, they start shooting that stop sign down at the end of the road. I know, I live in Big Lake. I hear guns every single day. I have gun neighbors that sit there and shoot their guns on a regular basis. We also have a noise ordinance that we are supposed to, certain amount of time after night, you're supposed to keep it down. I have had some very unruly neighbors. What I hear going on here is we got some unruly neighbors that just don't seem to want to listen to each other. My neighbor down the street started shooting their gun out of their backyard, and they were, who knows where they were shooting at. But unlike what I'm hearing other people that are against Jesse's offer here of trash canning this whole thing, is that you want us to not call the cops, that you want to regulate that someone in their backyard can't shoot. Instead, what I did is I went down to my neighbor and I said, hey, I got a kid over here. We're trying to sleep. It's after 10 o'clock at night. Why in the hell are you shooting your gun? Lo and behold, he looked at me. The gal that was with him, a couple of friends, they're all drinking beer, and they, oh, I am so sorry. I didn't realize what time it was. I have never heard them ever again shoot a gun past 10 o'clock at night. At all. But they still shoot. I live in an area where I can, during the right season, go out and shoot a moose in my yard. I can walk into my neighbor's yard and shoot a moose in his yard. Of course, he's given me permission to be able to do that. So where does this gun range actually affect? Right now you're looking at ordinances that are going to be affecting a gun range. It sounds to me more like it's an ordinance that's going to affect my rights to be able to shoot my gun at the moose crossing through my yard at the right time of the season. I'm completely against what you're trying to do. I'm all for Jesse's offer that he has out on the table, the trash can. Thank you.
The doggy wants to talk.
Hi, members of the Assembly. My name is Christina Mockby. I am a property owner here in the Valley. I moved here from Anchorage. I came to Alaska in 2011. I am also a voter. I am an Army veteran. I'm also a registered nurse. Gun ownership is very important to me, and I tell you about all of my history here. I started shooting in Tennessee, in Southeast Tennessee. I'm an original hillbilly. In the field, I shot at cans on fence posts, and that's how I learned to shoot. My children and their children are moving up here this summer. My grandson, who's 9, wants to shoot a caribou because he loves caribou sticks. There has to be a safe place for him to learn. And this regulation does not do a damn thing to make things better here. These regulations are unnecessary. They are unwanted. And you, as our voices, have a responsibility to us to honor our wishes. Let me talk to you just a little bit here about the back doors. In 20-025, 17.68.060 operating standards. B, item B, no sound resulting from the outdoor shooting facility is allowed to exceed 90 decibels as measured at or within the boundary of the property of the receiving land. 90 decibels from the University of Minnesota Health.org website. 90 decibels is a subway sound, shouted conversation. A school dance is 101 to 105 decibels. An ATV or motorcycle is 96 to 100. A chainsaw, leaf blower, or snowmobile is, and I know it's a snow machine, but it says snowmobile here, 106 to 115. A gunshot or a siren at 100 feet is 140 decibels. How do you expect any range to meet this criteria? It's not going to happen. And this is only another way to try and regulate the citizens' rights. We don't need this. We don't want this. And you all have the responsibility to vote the way we ask you to. You are our hired employees.
Last speaker I have the list is David Young.
Hi, my name is David Young. I'm a Voting Valley resident. I've been listening to everybody tonight. It's been a long night. A lot of people got to speak. One thing I had a problem with was Mr. Wells. He's taken this private dispute and expanded it to the entire borough. This should have been handled, you've heard it many times, privately. But it's going about the wrong way. But he actually issued a threat. He threatened everybody here that he's going to continue this in every district.
Yep.
I can't roster tonight. Call everyone in this room to follow him along, or is he going to try to sneak it through? I don't know, but it's a threat. No one else has been threatening anybody. We've been talking and doing it the right way. I kind of took offense to his threat, and I'm glad they followed him around and challenged him on every point. Another guy mentioned that the guy in his dispute only bought 40 acres. How many people here have 40 acres? How is that not enough to shoot? That's crazy to think that 40 acres is not enough for this to even to be feasible to shoot on. One last thing, once we're done, you guys are going to speak, and we were here in September, and a comment was made, well, if the conditional use process was in place, that Mr. Moss would have been able to get his range in place. The room laughed. So please don't offend us with that again, because that's not the way regulation works. Regulation does not make it easier for stuff to get into place. It actually chokes it down and shuts it down. It's not the way to go about it. Thank you.
I have completed my list of names, about 5 pages, I guess. So is there anybody else in the audience who hasn't spoken already who would like to be recognized? Mr. Alexander, please.
Mike Alexander from Duke Lake. I'd like to apologize to y'all. I was sliding in from Anchorage, so I didn't get here in time to sign up. But this would be, I totally support what Jesse's doing here, Jesse Sumner. The tabling this, it's something that's unneeded, doesn't need to take place at all. And the reason being, even if you do, the noise decibels, like they pointed out, is ridiculous. There's a shooting range right down in the St. Louis suburbs. It's trap shooting, and there's like probably 20 stations there. And they have competition. You got at least 20 people shooting at roughly the same time with different pigeons flying and stuff. So it's not, the noise problem isn't there. I've stood out on one, it was a solid mile of those. There's 800 people shooting there on teams, and you can't feel the noise. It's not that bad. It's not as irritating to me. My irritating noise is a Yamaha motorcycle. I'm like this. But the shotguns themselves don't make that much noise, and unless you're shooting something like a .338 Lapua or something, or a 50 caliber, you're not going to have that much jump anyway. So 90 decibel is ridiculous. Like the lady said, chainsaws run higher, and most motorcycles do. And the thing is, this isn't really needed. It was a neighbor's dispute. It should have been handled between two people walking up, and saying, don't shoot after 10, all that stuff. And that was even observed this New Year's in Big Lake. The rockets went off, and I don't know where the automatic or where the semi-automatic rifle fire went, but we didn't have it this year. It's kind of sad. But mostly this has to be done so people can shoot. I don't shoot in my yard anymore because I've got people who've grown up around me. But this is just a really poor thought out resolution for people. It's just a way of controlling this to where you can eventually shut it down. And we've had offers we should probably have at least 3 more ranges in this whole borough, because I drive roughly 30 miles up to Tokyo.
It'll become obsolete. You look around the country, look at other places that, for the majority of people that live there, take California or Oregon, places like that, Portland, places like that, for instance, they don't shoot, they don't appreciate that right, so most of them don't support the Second Amendment because of that. Can't tell you how many people approached me when my latest visit to California for a concert, asked me about, you're Alaska, you support guns, you hunt, I don't think you should have guns. Well, without our right to bear arms and practice that right, we won't have a country anymore. Within a few generations, we'll lose it. So, again, challenge y'all to reconsider this. And, I think you've beaten it like a dead horse here. It definitely needs some more thought. For now, definitely throw it in the shredder. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Howard. I'm Luke Howard's wife. I just kind of wanted to make a couple of things kind of clear. For one, there was a comment that we were the ones that owned the 40 acres. That is not true. We do not own the 40 acres. We are friends of the people who own the 40 acres, and it is merely friends that do go up there and shoot. We have 5 acres up in that direction and choose not to shoot on our property anymore because the safety. There's plenty of houses that are around us now that it's not safe for us. So safety is extremely important for me and my family. Our kids have been shooting and for years. I mean, they were tiny when we started and they're 18 and almost 14 now. And they know the rules. It is so important for us. We started out in Oregon and we saw the slippery slope and we do not want it here. We moved up here to get away from that and we just really don't want to have to move again. We love it here. So I do not support this, and please, please listen to us. Thank you.
Anybody else who hasn't spoken and wishes to do so? So if not, I am going to close audience participation at this time, and I need to recognize that Assemblymember McCabe arrived at 6:50 p.m. During public testimony, so I didn't want to interrupt the public testimony to insert that, but it is something we need to recognize. And I would suggest that we go ahead and take a 10-minute break for now, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Ordinance 20-25 has been moved. However, I'd like to have the clerk go ahead and read that into the record.
Thank you. An ordinance adopting MSB 17.68 outdoor shooting facilities in order to establish standards for commercial, educational, and nonprofit outdoor shooting facilities.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And Assemblymember Bowman, do you wish to speak to the ordinance?
Yes, please. I represent District 7. We have guns like we have dogs. Everyone has one, some of us have dozens. And we're the proud home of the Upper Susitna shooters, and I hope to be the future home of many more well-planned ranges. We've been having this discussion in my district for over a year now, since I've been elected, and before that. And I've actually, the comments are overwhelmingly in support of the CUP process. The problem I have with our conversation tonight is when this came forward to look at the draft language, everyone who called me with their concerns, I said, this is just writing the draft language. There would be additional time for comment, that this is all part of the process. This is part of kind of our compromise because we couldn't put the advisory group together. This was a chance for all of those at-large advisory group members that weren't able to serve on the group to comment and to formulate what they felt was reasonable. Then the assumption was that we would refer this to the Planning Commission, and then we would have another 90 days for the public to weigh in. The Planning Commission would look at it, and then at some date in the future, the Assembly could actually decide whether or not this has any merit. It was never my intention to vote on it tonight, and it was not my constituents. I don't feel like they've had the opportunity to weigh in on this. Most of them are currently buried under 2 foot of snow. So they could not have come to comment tonight if they wanted to. I really wish we would just continue the process and continue the conversation so my district can weigh in. Thank you.
Any other comments? Assemblymember Sumner?
Yeah. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The federal government every year promulgates a large number of regulations, and every regulation they attempt to say that it will save a certain number of lives and at a certain cost. And I don't know if anybody's seen the size of the Federal Register, but it is enormous. Now, if their math worked out, we should all just about be living forever by now. Except that, up until just recently, the life expectancy in the United States has been falling. I don't think that people really see the unintended consequences, the unintended costs of these regulations. If you don't let people build factories, you might save some narrow, narrow harm. But those factories are going to be built somewhere. They're just not going to be able to provide jobs for our children in the future. If almost every single person I know, well, the vast majority of people in the Mat-Su Borough own guns. If we don't provide places for them to go and learn how to use them safely, how many lives are going to be lost to accidents? My neighbor, God bless him, his brother was arrested nearly butt naked in the cul-de-sac. They shoot guns all the time. I would prefer that they go to a range. I'd prefer that they had a range that, had a reasonable investment in safety. That's not, if we have a process where you're requiring people to go to a civil engineer and get approval, get borough approval, it will only become more and more onerous, and we will not get the ranges that we need to teach the future children safe firearms use. I don't think that anybody that's proposing this has bad intentions. I just think that they're not considering the full ramification of the effects that it will have. If we want to reduce the number of people that are shooting privately on their property and maybe in a questionable manner, we should provide more shooting ranges. We don't have to worry about people digging out their backyard and creating dangerous swimming pools. The borough provides swimming pools at low cost. We've subsidized that. We have a lot of vacant land, and we could use it to offer up to nonprofits and education groups that want to create shooting ranges. It seems like this process that we're dragging through is only going to result in, I think, when you ignore the will of the people go into the ballot with a ballot proposition and overturning this. And I think that we can save a lot of time if we just acknowledge that there's some things that the borough can do and there's some things that we can't improve. And I think this is one of the ones we cannot improve. Well, we can improve it, but not through regulation. Our country's been fighting the war on drugs for 50 years? We've been fighting the war on poverty for about the same. I don't know that we're making that much progress. Just because you make something illegal doesn't mean that people are going to stop doing it. It just means that the wrong people are going to be doing it. I went to school in Southside Chicago for a year. I heard gunfire 24 hours a day there too, except you can't legally own a gun there. So, and they have regulations up the wazoo. You can't regulate stupid. So I do strongly object to continuing this process. I don't think that we're going to get any good result, and I'd love to work with anybody that wants to find a way for us to create more shooting ranges so we can have safe shooting. Thank you.
Assembly members, is there any other discussion in regards to the referral ordinance? Assembly member Dowers.
Thank you. That's a hard act to follow. Also, I've never been compared to a plumber before. And I love the Sound of Freedom. One of my four brothers was an F-15 pilot. He always loved whenever the jets go overhead. I can't remember who said that. The Sound of Freedom. I loved it. But I agree with Jesse and I think everybody here, that we need more ranges. I don't think there's anybody in this room who thinks that is a bad idea. And I don't know if there's anybody in this room that doesn't shoot or you lose me. I had my kids go through hunter's education, so it's not for me a Second Amendment issue that we're talking about. It's a land use issue. And I have an issue with the process that Jesse's talking about, because he's presupposing that you know the result, and so you're not giving the process a chance. If this room were flipped and it was some other legislation and we had, 60% on one side and 40% on the other, 70%, 30%, I would support allowing people to have a say. I talked to Luke Howard last week. He called me because we talked about this issue. And he said, is this gonna, is there a motion that's is this on the table for the 18th? And I said, apparently I'm not on Facebook enough because I hadn't seen anything. And I said, I will let you know when I see it show up on the agenda about 2 days later. So a lot of stuff that's contentious, we give 2 weeks notice. So I have received from people throughout the borough and a lot in my district, a lot of emails in support of this. Also a lot opposed. And I went back and I read all the comments. I borrowed from Mr. Strong, I borrowed the book of all the comments that came in before January 31st, before this got revised, and I spent a couple hours going through that. And there were a lot of comments opposed. There were a fair number of comments in support, and there were also some comments from people who were coaches of shooting teams, of NRA certified instructors who had just, not I'm opposed, I'm for, but this looks pretty basic to me, but you might rethink the noise level. You might rethink the distance from the lot line, specific things, because they said, yeah, you need a backstop, you need sideburns, you need to think about your danger zone, how far that's gonna go. I also saw that Fairbanks, 2016, passed an outdoor shooting range ordinance. They had a gun range go into a neighborhood up there, and as a result, passed one. So I made some calls. It was not exhaustive to just kind of see, hey, did that stop shooting ranges from being built? Because the other thing I have done is sit down with Mr. Lackey and Mr. Young, talk to Mr. Moss, and also to Ms. Anthony, who wants to put in a tactical facility. I said, in no way do I want to see legislation that keeps us from building good, safe ranges. I don't know if this legislation is going to be the answer. It's not, it specifically says does not regulate the discharge of firearms on private property. So it's not going to infringe a right, but it's not also going to solve that problem that people are talking about in the moose range and neighbors. That's a more, as noted, intractable problem. So that's not going to solve that issue. Is there room, interest in the borough for, the Fairbanks one says range can't be within a quarter mile of a dwelling unless the property owners have specifically given permission for that. It can't be within 100 feet of a public right-of-way. There's some basic things. So I just feel from a process perspective, if this was 100 to 0, everybody came and said, this is not a good idea, but it is not. I have had a fair number of people who are interested in this, but I feel like from a process perspective to give people their say, and I would urge people to, I just wish we weren't wasting people's time with this meeting. Like, I've been on the other side of this, and there's a lot of effort to come and testify, and I've really appreciated people coming and giving the input, because that's a lot of hours out of your day. But giving people the chance to come and just comment on both sides of it in front of the planning commission, I would urge people to come back and say, these are the basic things any good range is gonna have. And that's the question I've asked people who are putting in ranges. What would you do anyways? So it's not adding additional, complexity, nothing that's gonna raise the ability of somebody to put in a good range. And the other thing I have talked to folks about is the same thing we talked about here, is getting more mod roads, and getting a shotgun range for the kids out here. So, you know, whether that, I'm not sure what that involves, like a task force, to walk, you know, work through it. I know Jonesville is looking at trying to put a public use area in up there. Is there room for a shooting range up there? But I would love to be part of that effort to try to get more ranges, because that solves a lot of the problems. So, from that standpoint, I'll be voting to move this forward to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Miller. Assemblyman Leonard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess I'm actually on the opposite side of this. On the process, I disagree with this one. I was against Resolution 19083, and I believe that by referring this to the Planning Commission as is, we're almost giving this is what we want you to work off of. And I don't think that, I think this is a flawed ordinance, and working off this one will not help us get more shooting ranges. And so I'm going to be really brief, which is a surprise here, and say I don't support referring this to the Planning Commission. Thank you, Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Any other Assemblymembers? Assemblymember Hale.
Sure, I'll speak. First of all, I want to thank everyone who came down here tonight, especially through all this snow. You know, I say it all the time that if we want a more responsive and engaged government, we need to be more responsive and engaged citizens. I have been engaged on this issue for well, a long time, well over a year. I was actually the only person who was applied to and appointed to the gun range ordinance working group that the borough formed. We never had a quorum of members, so we never actually met. I've been speaking to my community councils on this. I am very much an advocate of a robust public process. And what that means in this case is, to me, is we don't make a decision on this ordinance until we have a final draft in front of us. And I've been speaking to my community councils. I told them, you know, all about the planning department having their public comment period on the first draft. The first draft was very, very bad. And you can see how that public comment period shaped the second draft, which is better. I still have a number of concerns with the second draft, but the process here is it goes to the Planning Commission, and when they are done with it, they will make recommendations, and it will come back to us here at the Assembly. And at that time, I'm going to be asking that we give 1 month notice of our public hearing for that ordinance, so that my community councils, I have 7 community councils in my district, so that my community councils can all weigh in on that ordinance, on that specific final draft. And so, you know, I think that the public process is very important, and I don't think that I will be voting to short circuit it here tonight. I think it will continue.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Well, I will take the opportunity to address this proposed referral. You know, I believe the shooting ranges are needed infrastructure, and they're required in order to have safe, you know, in order to train our young people and have safe gun ownership and safe gun usage. And you know, the Mat-Su just has too few gun ranges. However, you know, we have been a completely unregulated environment forever on gun ranges. And the reason I bring that up is I heard a lot of argument this evening about the fact that setting standards for a gun range would inhibit additional commercial ranges. we haven't made any progress over the last number of years in a totally unregulated environment. So how can we really say that regulations are going to stifle something that's really non-existent? So, you know, after reviewing the initial draft of this ordinance, I was really convinced that it was too restrictive. And so I joined with Assemblymember Sumner on his ordinance 2018 to just stop work on it, okay? But due to that opposition and the opposition of others, I mean, there was a great outcry about that first draft. There were some substantial changes made in 2025. And it actually gave me hope. Initially, I thought that the ordinance couldn't be fixed. It's still, I can't get into real details about the ordinance because we're not supposed to. This is on the advice of the clerk over here. But there are still some things that I feel need to be addressed in this ordinance. And so sending it, and I know you guys do too, and so sending it to the Planning Commission for further work, further public hearings, so that we can achieve some kind of consensus on what's needed, is a reasonable step in my estimation. So what would happen in the process? So there'd be some public hearings, there'd be some more public input. Folks would have an opportunity to truly review the latest version, which you know, not everybody was truly versed on what the latest version was this evening. So that people would have an opportunity to really know that, and then to speak to differences that need to be made there. And that's an opportunity for our entire community to do that, to give input. And you know, I see a lot of folks shaking their heads out there, but the fact of the matter is, as a community, we need to work together. We need to bridge some differences. And you know, I don't know of anybody in this crowd who doesn't believe in the Second Amendment and the importance of that right. So that is a commonality that we can build on. I honestly believe that further public comment will do us some good. So I will vote to refer it to the Planning Commission this evening. And I just simply wanted you to know my reasons for doing that is that we do have an opportunity to make something better and to assure the safety of our neighborhoods within the context of the fact that we are a growing borough. And I don't think anybody denies the fact that we are a growing borough with pressing problems that can create conflict. And this is one of those conflict areas. It's really demonstrated by the emotions that were shown tonight. So that's what I have to say about it. And I have Assemblymember Natlers.
I just wanted to respond to something that Representative Leonard said. Can we send any kind of message to the Planning Commission that we think this needs significant work and that there are significant concerns about it? So they don't take it as you were saying that this is, you know, we think this is good. I don't know if we can send some kind of message in terms of there are still concerns. We'd like to see work on this done at the Planning Commission level and with the public's input.
Assemblymember Leonard.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, I have a quick question for you or the clerk or the attorney. Is it my understanding that this has to come back in 90 days? What I saw in 90 days. I definitely disagree with that time frame. With all of the discussion we have, that I don't believe that the planning commission and our planning department could do justification for this issue with that type of deadline.
So, yeah, Madam Clerk.
Should you want to extend it, you can make a primary amendment to extend the deadline.
I would make, can I do that then? I would make a primary amendment for 180 days.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to refer this to the planning commission with an expected return of 180 days. Assemblymember Hale.
I would support that primary amendment, and also to kind of through the deputy mayor too, Assemblywoman Hours. I spoke to the attorney. He says we can go and testify, even as assembly members. We can go and testify to the planning commission. We can raise our concerns as individual citizens, and I intend to do so when the planning commission considers this ordinance.
Any other discussion on the primary amendment? Assemblymember Nally.
Through the deputy mayor. I would also support that, but can we also can we communicate to them that we do think this needs work beyond us coming and personally testifying? Can the assembly as a whole?
Yeah, perhaps we could have Alex Strong come up and talk about the process a little bit.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mr. Assistant Manager, members of the Assembly, Alex Strong, Development Services Manager for the borough. I guess if you want to extend it to 180 days, certainly it can be communicated, even just having it on the record, just speaking it on the record, it absolutely can be communicated to the Planning Commission that this ordinance is not to the Assembly's liking as it's written. I guess I would appreciate some feedback on what part of it is desired to be changed so that we can focus on those things. But absolutely, I don't know if it has been in writing, it's on the record, and it certainly can be communicated to them when we open meetings.
Assemblymember Sumner.
I see this all the time with government bodies. If you want to not make a difficult decision, you can refer things to committee. You can refer things to committee for a very long time. At some point, you should have the courage, and this is what you're elected for, to stand up and make it known where you really stand. So it does not surprise me that you guys would all like to see this pushed off. It has been. I think that we know where this is going. I mean, I believe that we do, and I don't think that it's going to happen. I think we could save a lot of money and a lot of these people's time on both sides if we acknowledge that this is just a bad idea. It's not going to get us more shooting ranges, and we can just stop this now.
Assemblymember Bowlby.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm not sure we need to send the message that we don't like it. I don't think we should take a stand on it at all. I think it needs to go to the Planning Commission completely neutral and let them, have the conversation that needs to be had. What I would like to hear from Mr. Strong is what's to be gained by changing this to 180 days. I mean, in reality, are we not just going to not look at it for the first 60 days and then, or 90 days as the case may be, and then still have the conversation? I mean,
what's the advantage to waiting?
So if this gets referred tonight, then it will go to the planning commission on their first meeting in April. And if they were given an extra 3 months, I don't know if they'd use it. They could hold, I guess if they have a tough time getting through it, they could hold more meetings and have staff do more research and come up with different solutions to problems they see with the ordinance. As far as ordinances go, this one is actually fairly simple. It's compared to other ordinances, it's basic. I don't see them needing a full 6 months to do it. I think they can do it within 90 days.
Assemblymember McKee.
This is to the clerk. What is the motion right now on the floor?
The motion before the body, Assemblymember McKee, is to strike the referral for 90 days and insert 180 days.
I would speak in opposition to that. I don't believe that this should be referred anywhere right now. Sometimes there's an issue that comes up, rarely, but an issue that has to be solved, that the public has to be totally comfortable with, and it takes a lot of time to do that. You're not going to do that in 180 days or even a year, okay? This is one of those rare issues that now the public is aware of. The borough should be trying to sell a position, or not a position, sell information on it so that the public can make a decision. This really isn't a decision for the 7 of us sitting up here. No. It involves the community, so I speak in opposition to any extension on this. I would vote strictly on whether we advance 20.025 or whether we drop it, which is what, as my understanding, Assemblyman Jesse has said he wants to drop it, and I'm for that.
Folks, you have to stop this.
Assemblymember Hale.
Yeah, I just through the deputy mayor to Assemblymember Jesse. Thank you. It's been a long day. I think that I guess we just have a kind of fundamental disagreement about the process. I do think that the process that we have here in the borough is designed to be a good process. We have, we have the referral to the planning commission for the 90 days. They have the public hearing. It's not an abdication of our authority because the final product does eventually come to us for a yes or no. And I think that the more public input we have on the final product, the better it will get. Will it get good enough that we, decide to adopt it? I don't know at this point, but I do believe in the process. So that's.
How much more public comment do you want? People challenge the snow.
Please
People came out here, they've talked.
And how much money are you going to
How much more money do you want to
spend?
waste? How much more comment do you want, Tim Hale?
You work for us. Yeah, how much more money are you
You
going
want
to
to
spend
slow roads so
making
you
this
get more
stuff?
support?
This is stupid.
Listen to the people. These people are all here on snowy days and sacrifice their time.
And the vote that is no.
And no, I will not be quiet, and no, I will not refuse to clap.
I agree.
You all have been weighed, wanted, and already measured. You're done.
Yep.
You're done. I'm done.
Yep.
Recall, done. Stop wasting your time. They're gonna fucking waste your money.
Assemblymember Bovee.
Let's go, guys.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move to extend the meeting to 10:30.
Any objection? Seeing none, the meeting is extended to 10:30.
You guys are a bunch of crooks.
We have a motion on the floor, and Assemblymember Leonard, would you like to speak to the motion?
You're criminals.
Assemblymember Leonard.
How does it feel to sell your soul?
Again, Deputy Mayor and Assembly Member Sumner, I'm going to vote against, well, I guess I have to talk to the primary motion. But I'm going to say that the only reason I want to extend it is because I believe that this referral is going to go through, even though I think it's a flawed ordinance. And if that's going to happen, I do want people to have the time. But again, we'll come back to the ordinance again, but the only reason I'm extending it to 180 days is because, or requesting that, is because I think if this goes through, that then the process needs to allow for true going back and redeveloping this ordinance.
Personally, I agree with you, Mr. Leonard, but I need to go ahead and recognize Assemblymember Nowers.
Thank you. So, I do think that, you know, my main objection was that the process, there was a very short notice for this, even for me as an assembly member. And so, I don't feel like there's a need to string it out. I feel like 90 days is enough, because otherwise you're kind of tasking the planning commission with being a working group, and, you know, if they can't get something, 90 days gives enough time for the public to have notice, and for that public testimony to happen. So I'd be in favor of 90 days, and yeah, I'd be in favor of this. Let the chips fall.
Point of order.
Okay, can we go ahead and
Point of order.
move this? You don't have that right, I'm sorry.
Excuse us, you work for us. Isn't there two?
So would we, any objection to the motion to extend for 180 days?
In that order.
And there is, I see objection, so we'll take a vote on the board. Yes vote would extend it to 180 days, and no vote would not.
That motion failed with Assemblymember Hale, Leonard, and Mayfield in support.
Okay, so we are back at the primary motion on to go ahead and refer it to the Planning Commission for public testimony for a period of 90 days. Is there any further discussion on that? Assemblymember Leonard.
Again, I'll say that what we're referring to me is a flawed ordinance, and it's not taking into consideration the public comments that we heard tonight, and definitely I'm going to vote against this. Thank you, Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comment?
I call the question.
We do need to vote for call the question, is that correct? Is there any objection to calling the question? Seeing none, the question's been called, so a vote yes would send it to the Planning Commission, a vote no would not.
It passes with Assemblymember Sumner, McKee, and Leonard opposed.
Okay, so we are on, we're going to move on to resolution 20-18. Madam Clerk, would you read that into the record, please?
A resolution rescinding resolution serial number 19083, which requested that staff develop a conditional use permit regulating shooting ranges.
And Assemblymember Sumner, would you care to move it and speak to it if you care to?
I move to adopt ordinance 20-018 and speak to it. Yeah, I think that we really need to think about this, and I think that we're being abusive to both sides of the issue here. You know, the planning commission will look at this, they'll take public comment, they'll make recommendations, but at the end of the day, I don't think that we are going to adopt this. At least, I mean, I hope we're not. I could be wrong, but I think that we're not going to adopt it, but if it is adopted, I think it's quite likely to be overturned by ballot initiative. And this entire process is basically stringing along a lot of people here. You know, you have the people on the one side that are eating up a lot of their time, and we have people on the other side that may be able to seek relief through another means. If it is the case that their neighbor is shooting in an unsafe manner, or then they need to seek relief through the courts or alternate means. We're not going to address this in a way that creates more, through regulation, through adding restrictions. We're not going to address this in a way that creates more shooting ranges. We're not going to address this in a way that provides them relief, the folks in Fishhook that are upset about this. We actually cannot regulate private shooting on people's private property. And I've heard it contended both ways, that either, you know, one side says this is private property and they're not engaged in commercial activity, and the other side says that they are engaged in commercial activity. But if they're not engaged in commercial activity, then our ordinance will not apply. And if they are, then by passing it, we will be grandfathering in the shooting range that they have there, if it is indeed a commercial shooting range. That there is really no relief that we'd be offering them, but we are offering them some sort of false hope. And I think you should really consider that. It's not, in my view, it's not right. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Assemblymember Nowers.
I would just say that this whole issue, the original ordinance that started predated my time on assembly, but the concern I have heard is not having a shooting range located in a residential neighborhood. So from that standpoint, I think, I think the false hope would be if people interpreted this as somehow going to help them in the moose range or with a neighbor that's shooting on their private range, because it's not there to address that. But the issue of whether you know, we, the borough, should have something that says you don't put it right in the middle of a neighborhood, whether people see value in that. I think that's the issue I've heard from people, and I think is worth giving them a chance to have their public say on.
Yeah, specifically to the resolution 20018, you know, this ordinance is going to the planning commission for a public hearing, and I think if we told staff now at this time that they're not to work on it, we would be tying their hands in assisting the planning commission in their work on this ordinance. So for that reason, I'm going to oppose it.
Assemblymember Leonard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to speak for this resolution. Again, I was a little befuddled by the way we did this evening by putting the resolution after we refer it to the Planning Commission. But I think this is the way that I can vote to say that I am not in support of the CUP process. And I'm going to vote for this resolution because I think this is going to be the ordinance that we referred is going to hinder promoting shooting ranges. So I'm going to support this resolution.
Any further comment? Okay, we should be prepared to move for a vote. So is there any objection to 20-18? There is, and so I would, let's go ahead and put it on the board. Yes vote would approve 2018, and no vote would be for disapproval.
It failed with Assembly Members Sumner, McKee, and Leonard in support.
Okay. So that brings us to public hearings. And is there any need for a short break at all, or? Okay. Okay, so, all right.